Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to another edition of the movie Battleground. Today, we are back for the third title match of the new era, and this one is already starting off better than the last one because I don't have to fucking play in it. That's a huge fucking relief. Once again, back with us, we have Henry Sanchez, who is now the defending champion of movie Battleground, looking to pick up a second defense, and standing in his way is Chadwick Webb, who is currently on a 3-win streak in order to earn his way into this. Both of these guys have impressive records. They've both only taken one loss in their careers, and they've had some stellar wins along the way. And this is also, in terms of generations of Battleground, a big matchup because, as people know, Henry is one of the OGs of the game. He's been here since like day two. He wasn't in like the first match, but he's been here basically since the beginning. Chad is I guess technically speaking, the elite of the rookies now, as he is the first rookie who started just over a year ago last year for his first Battleground match to make it to a title match, which is obviously a big honor for anyone to have, but he is the one who has claimed it, and he certainly earned it. So let's go ahead and get these guys on screen and get it going. Introducing first the challenger with a record of 5 wins, 1 defeat. He is Chad Danger Webb. Chad, welcome back, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You're definitely a hard task ahead of me with this match, but I've come all this way. It's one of those things where I started this. I didn't know how well I would do at it, but I tried my best, and I feel like I did a great job. The last time I faced a competitor at I feel like Henry's level was Joe, and that didn't end up too well, score wise. But I feel like I did take him to task that day, anyways. And even though that was like my only loss, I feel like since then I've been just doing really well. I've watched Henry's matches again multiple times. Definitely a competitor that says a lot of really good stuff, and hopefully I can counter a lot of it, and we'll see how it goes. Excited about the questions and our choices. Going to be a very interesting match. I hope people watching it will have a good time.
All right. Well, I'm not going to rattle your brain with any more questions. I'm going to let you cool off in the back, and we will introduce your opponent. Coming in as the defending champion with a record of 7 wins, 1 defeat, and 2 knockouts, he is Henry Confidential Sanchez. Henry, welcome back, sir. The last time we saw each other, it was probably just as friendly, but now I don't have to play you. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Chad's a great dude. I'm happy as as one of the people who's been around for a long time. I'm happy to see newcomers. It's so weird to say like rookies in terms of this because of age differences of people around the community, because it's like they're veterans in terms of the movie sphere, and all that stuff. But it's interesting, in terms of the structure of the debate. You have to learn, whether it's in this one maybe the blind round, the speed round, stuff like that you might not be used to. Just like you said, the quality of the opponent. Chad's a great dude. Like he said, I love the questions. I'm excited for this. Got some great judges. Got a great host. I'm ready for a great match. We want to bring the heat.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so I guess my question to you is, I know for a long time, back in the old days when you played, this was the thing you wanted that you never got, was to be champion. Now you've had it. Now you've defended. Do you still put any pressure on yourself to keep winning, or are you at a place where it's like, if it didn't go your way for any reason, no sweat off your back, I'll get here again? Or is it still that same mentality every time?
Well, to be honest, I've had the same mindset. From day one. If I lose, I'm fine with losing if the other player does better, and I understand the judging and like their point of view. Obviously, I'm not going to agree with them because I think I win. But as long as I understand like their perspective, and I believe they made the decision in their mind that was understandable, then I'm cool with it. So yeah, as long as everything goes square and it's a fire match and Chad brings the heat, hypothetically, if I were to lose and he earned it, I have no shame in that. It's one of those where I love debate because it's all in your hands. Trivia, I love trivia as well, but trivia is a thing where it's the luck of the questions. In this, yeah, it's the luck of the question, but at least you have time to prepare for it, so you can adjust to the questions even if they're not in your wheelhouse. So yeah, I want to debate. I'm a competitive person. I want to win, but if Chad brings it and I don't get it, we'll see what happens. To the best, let the best man win.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Chad in. and we are going to go ahead and get into this. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best normally of 5 rounds, but tonight's a title match, so it is a best of 7 rounds. It is the first of 4 points earns a victory. Each round of debate is going to be worth 1 point. If we get 4 points in a row for one person, that is going to be a victory by knockout. And if after 6 rounds there is a tie, we will go to the speed round, sudden death at the end of all of this. However, in terms of focusing on the first 4 rounds, that doesn't change. We're given the questions ahead of time. There will be 1 minute to open, 2 minutes to expand, 4 minutes to open debate, and 60 seconds to close. Following that, I do have 3 judges backstage: Austin, Hal, Amadou Moses, and Madi or Raymond. I will bring them on screen, and based off of what was said by the competitors, they will deliberate going into this as to who gets the point. Now, with all of that said, guys, do you have any questions for me, or are we ready to get going?
Nope.
Let's get it. Dude abides.
All right. So normally this is where I come up with some sort of attempt at convincing banter, but for those of you who have seen our previous title matches, you guys are aware that in title matches, all questions are strength selected, or at least the main 4 are strength selected by the competitor. So each of these guys do have 2 strength here tonight. So rather than try and banter and cover who the strength may be, well, I'm not going to reveal whose is whose. We're just going to get straight to the questions. Question number 1 is, what is David Lynch's most underrated film? Certainly an interesting director, maybe in the minds of people since Dune came out last year, that resurrects thoughts of his own film. Or, I don't know, maybe you're a fan of The Cleveland Show and you learned that he voiced Gus the bartender on that. No, that's not a joke. Seriously, look that up. He was a cast member on The Cleveland Show. Weird dude. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into this. Henry, as a defending champ, you are obviously deemed the favorite, which means you have the choice of questions, evens, or odds tonight, since there are more than the average amount. You chose to go first on the evens, which means, Chad, you are going to be up on the odds. As I go ahead and bring in the timer for your round, and I will rewind it a little bit as well, since it seems to have not reset itself. I do want to wish you guys both the best of luck on this, as it is a big match. May the best man win. Chad, when you're ready.
David Lynch is a strange man who makes strange films, but that's what we love about him. He is not afraid to be weird and show you things you've never seen before. The least talked about, nearly lowest rated of any of his creations, and a very strange film is Lost Highway. This movie began a kind of unofficial trilogy of Lynch films, all set in Los Angeles, including Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire. Lost Highway is the Batman Begins to Mulholland Drive's The Dark Knight, low-key brilliant, but overshadowed. Lost Highway is rated low on every metric, including Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, but it should be rated much higher. I think what happened was people got used to the tame David Lynch with The Elephant Man and even early Twin Peaks and forgot just how weird he could be. Those are most of the negatives you will hear when reading reviews. Are Lost Highway is just too strange. But Lost Highway is meant to be strange. It's meant to ask questions about identity and obsession and make you think. Considering we now have movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once that is weird as hell but beloved by critics and audiences, it's a shame people barely gave Lost Highway the time of day. It's a very special film.
And time. All right, Henry, over to you, sir.
All right, so there's a reason that David Lynch has never been used as a strength in this league, and maybe never in trivia, or hardly. It's just because he's a niche director. And what makes him so appealing to his niche is either the weirdness or just the profound acting within his films. But unfortunately, Lost Highway doesn't have that. The difference in my movie is it doesn't fit within that niche. I chose The Straight Story, and The Straight Story is a Disney movie directed by David Lynch, which on paper, that's weird. You think of a Disney movie, you're like, I'm not going to watch that because I'm not going to take it seriously. You think of a David Lynch movie, you're like, I'm probably not going to watch that because, that's just not my bag. Or if you're a David Lynch fan, you're like, I'm probably not going to watch that because I'm a David Lynch fan because of the weird. So The Straight Story covers a story about, it's based on a true story. It's about a man who hears news of his brother who had a stroke, and he's going to travel cross country or, across the Midwest to go visit his brother, potentially for the last time. It's filled with heart and emotion, and David Lynch brings, a lot to it that you would not have expected from him.
And time. All right, so we have Lost Highway versus The Straight Story. Chad, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
Touching a bit on the Straight Story, it's a very sweet film that I really enjoyed. It's one of David Lynch's most accessible films, along with The Elephant Man. These are the films that always get great attention and recognition. The Straight Story is considered a Disney classic. It's highly rated on every metric, and people seem to really love it, as they should, because it's good. But that means it's definitely not underrated. Hell, Richard Farnsworth was nominated for Best Actor for this film and was the oldest man to do it for over 20 years before Anthony Hopkins broke it with The Father. That being said, Lost Highway has everything that usually gets Lynch films praise: is his storytelling, performances, unique visuals, amazing sound design, set design, musical scores and soundtracks, but also experimental filmmaking. Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette broke away from their usual fare in this. A short plot description: Bill Pullman kills his wife, feels guilty, turns into a completely different person, tries to rescue a woman who looks like his wife from a worse guy, but he doesn't get to be with her. He doesn't get to be the hero. Patricia Arquette turns from being an object of lust for men into a character with female agency with the line, "You'll never have me." When Bill Pullman turns into a different person, I mean, they change the actor to convey the point. It's very trippy, and you normally don't see things like that happen in movies, so it makes Lost Highway super unique and rewatchable. The storytelling, like in Pulp Fiction, is told in a circular fashion, with events that happen at the beginning also happening at the end. Like in Vertigo, Lost Highway explores the nature of obsession with women. It's strange how every facet of Lost Highway seems like it was primed to be a beloved classic, but for some reason, people didn't want to give it a chance. As I've said before, people love unique films with interesting storytelling techniques. I think Lost Highway was ahead of its time, with commentary on the unknown, the unknowable, uncertainty, and the nature of identity and obsession. The Straight Story won the Palme d'Or at the 1999 Cannes Film Festival and received praises from many critics, including Roger Ebert, who compared the dialogue in the movie to that of Ernest Hemingway writing. I mean, how much praise can a film get before you think it is perfectly rated?
All right, and that is going to be time for Chad. Henry, back over to you.
All right, so I want to touch on everything with the Straight Story. So simply speaking, yes, at the time, the Straight Story was revered well because it's a well-quality movie. But if you look at in today's eyes of the audiences, whether it's a younger audience, new to film making, new to just film audience in general, or even just revisiting it, it's not a film that people think about. It's not a film that people remember or have ever known was directed by David Lynch. And that is because it doesn't fit within that niche. And like I said, everything with David Lynch's filmmaking, on paper, generally speaking, with his filmography, is weird and over the top, but he actually, draws back, and he actually is able to have a fantastic character study. This is a movie that covers mental health, age, relationship with family, PTSD, generally speaking, the well-being and, good karma, good mannerisms, the Midwest. It does a great job of showcasing how people can, help and be good people. It's essentially No Man's Land, almost 20 years, over 20 years before Nomadland came out. This is a movie that shows a side of the U.S. that you just do not see. And it does a great job of showcasing this man's drive and ambition to visit his brother. Lost Highway, you mentioned that it's part of a quote-unquote unofficial trilogy with Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, and those are two, well superior movies. Mulholland Drive obviously is a classic for a reason, and Inland Empire is one of those movies that is so crazy and over the top. You love it for the reasons that, people that are not Lynch fans might hate it. Lost Highway is right there in the middle in terms of it's at the beginning of not only his career in this trajectory of what he's doing, but also this, change in storytelling that he's doing. Lost Highway, like you said, people didn't understand it because it's one of those stories where it's not clear. You have the scenes when you open up in the apartment and you have like the rock and roll stuff, and it just doesn't really fit within the narrative that he tightens up in Mulholland Drive and in Inland Empire. And also the thing that's missing from Lost Highway is you just don't have that standout performance in his other films, like Blue Velvet earlier with Dennis Hopper, and later in both Mulholland Drive with Naomi Watts and Inland Empire with Laura Dern. The Straight Story, like you said, yes, it was nominated for Best Lead Actor because that's what he can bring out of his movies is great performances. And unfortunately, we just don't get that from Lost Highway. So not only is it not underrated, but it's low-key kind of bad.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. As always, general reminder to be respectful of each other's time while still fitting everything in. Although, I mean, you guys are here for a reason. You should know that. When we get into it, time starts when the first person speaks.
I mean, I think, with the knock against the performances in Lost Highway, Patricia Arquette and Bill Pullman are acting against type. They're incredible in this. I think Patricia Arquette gets to play that like sexy character that she wanted to play, but she also gets to show a character that just has like such great like female agency towards the end of the movie that you think she's going to be just like one note, and that she like builds upon that. And I think she's actually really great. The other point I wanted to make real quick is that you talk about like the straight story being like so against type for David Lynch. It's actually really not, because if you look at like Twin Peaks, he loves that whole Midwestern kind of vibe and stuff like that. There's a lot of like really crazy stuff in it that, like, when the old man shoots the old lawnmower, there's just like really crazy, funny stuff in it that happens that is totally David Lynch's style. But also this movie, The Straight Story, is on Disney Plus for people to watch right now. And they do. People really enjoy this one.
Yeah, I disagree with that. So I want to start off by saying, obviously, these are just numbers, so take it how you want. But on Letterboxd, which is a super popular, way to review and talk about movies, The Straight Story has less than 45,000 complete reviews, whereas Lost Highway has over 100,000 reviews. Regardless of the ratings, people are just not seeing this movie, and it's easily accessible on Disney Plus, like you just said. And I want to touch on the Patricia Arquette part. Patricia Arquette had a character a couple years before this in True Romance, where she was able to be that strong, empowering woman, and she did a great job of that, as well as being sexy, but also a strong, powerful woman. And then a couple years later in Hole, she had a character of Kissing Kate Barlow, where she was able to be that overpowering, woman who actually has that, strong impact. And then Lost Highway, just right in the middle, that just doesn't do a good job of that. And like you said, everything with Bill Pullman's character, you just don't care, because guess what? You don't care about this relationship. And that's the difference between this and later, which he masters in Mulholland Drive. You actually care about Naomi Watts' come up, and when the reveal of that movie of everything, you actually understand and care about that. This one, you don't care about this because you don't actually get any backstory with their relationship. Whereas in Straight Story, you have that build up and all the scene in the bar when he talks to the other veteran of all his PTSD stuff and his regret with his brother and all of his last words, the relationship with him and his daughter, and just how, and he tells the story about, his wife having 14 kids and clearly none of them made it. And, his daughter with a stutter. It covers mental health, age, and all that stuff. Lost Highway doesn't care about any of that. It has no emotion. You don't really give a shit about it. It's just weird for the sake of being weird.
Oh, I totally disagree with that. And like you talk about like Patricia Arquette, I thought she was really great in the movie. So, that's just a little bit of a miscommunication there. Like we didn't watch the same movie, I guess. That's fine. I'm also not even trying to compare. Well, yeah, the audience definitely rate this one super low, and it should be rated way higher. Yours is rated like super freaking high. And if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, because I know there's like a little, I don't know, like the difference of people who use Letterboxd versus like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that. But like, if you go to The Straight Story, you would think that all the reviews are 1999. A lot of them are like 2020, 2021. People getting Disney Plus, people watching it for the first time and saying like, this is actually really amazing. This is kind of a little bit against type for David Lynch, but it still has some of those really great David Lynchian things in it that make it really great. And then they rate it a lot higher. Yeah. I'm just trying to, So Lost Highway has an abysmally low score on aggregator sites. Nobody talks about the film, and it's definitely a high point in Lynch's filmography, doing things he's never done before and also crafting yet another fantastic cinematic dreamscape. I think that, you go ahead, Henry.
All right, so I want to touch on a few comparisons you had. So you compared Lost Highway to Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that kind of really showcased what I was talking about. The reason that people are accessible to Everything Everywhere All at Once is because of the emotional impact and the heart, as well as being weird. Lost Highway doesn't have that. You compare it to Pulp Fiction and just the shift in narratives. People care about the dialogue and those characters. People don't care about the Lost Highway characters. You talked about the Dark Knight trilogy. If anything, this is the the Dark Knight Rise of this, where it falls flat, but it's at the beginning, and that's where it goes. This is the least at the bottom of this quote unquote trilogy, and it's that Straight Story is the Disney original that people, it's similar to like Remember the Titans. People forget that movie is as great as they don't look at it because of the Disney.
And time. All right, we're going to get into the 1 minute closings. Chad, you are up first when you begin speaking.
The question being most underrated David Lynch film. While he is an underrated director in general, some films are more well-received than others. The Straight Story is towards the top, especially of Lynch's straightforward linear stories, considered a Disney classic, has recent high reviews on critical aggregator sites, and is on Disney Plus for people to enjoy today, and they do. Lost Highway is a very unique film with lots to say, to which people did not give the time of day and just wrote it off as too strange. With films being lauded today like Everything Everywhere All at Once, strange isn't something that necessarily makes a movie bad if all the elements are there to make a really good movie, and Lost Highway has them. There are emotional parts in this. There are that you can see the obsession. That's an emotion, obsession of the main characters that really just want to be with this woman, but they're not good characters, and you can see the agency that Patricia Arquette gets. I also love that Lynch had Robert Blake basically create his own kind of creepy character, and I love that Lynch gave agency to all of these actors to do what they wanted to do to make a great film.
And time. All right, and then we're going to go back down to Henry. Final one when you begin speaking.
All right, so like I said at the top, David Lynch is a niche director that hardly people are a fan base of it except for his hardcore fan bases. Lost Highway is at the bottom of his filmography in terms of the weirdness. People are going to watch Blue Velvet. People are going to watch Eraserhead. People are going to watch Mulholland Drive 10 times before they watch Last Highway once. The Straight Story is a movie that he mastered the emotional impact that he's missing in Lost Highway. The reason it's underrated has nothing to do with the scores. It's about today's days and age of what we're looking about in terms of what are we talking about. When you think of David Lynch, The Straight Story is not the first thing you think of because of, you just don't think of it as his movie, not because, it's a bad movie, but because you forget that it's his movie. Lost Highway, the reason you're not talking about that movie is because it's at the bottom of his filmography, and that's the difference. So Straight Story is a better movie, 10 times more than Lost Highway, and but it's not a movie that you think of in David Lynch's filmography. It covers emotion. It has better acting. It has a story. The impact at the end of, it just fades to black because he finally gets back to his brother, because it's not, at that point, it's not for us, it's for them. He had that journey for the payoff. Lost Highway's payoff is the fact that the credits are done and I don't have to watch it again.
And time. All right. A great first round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and set you both in the back and bring our three judges in for a deliberation here. So just to run down a couple of facts checks, because most of this is stuff that can be checked up on. So The Straight Story, between the two films, Lost Highway and The Straight Story. Only The Straight Story did receive an Academy Award nomination. It was for Richard Farnsworth, who got a Best Actor nomination. Lost Highway did not receive any Academy Award nominations, although it is a known thing that David Lynch, of the famous directors, was one of the least nominated within the Academy. Lost Highway on Rotten Tomatoes has a 67% critic approval rating and an 87% audience approval rating. The Straight Story has a 95% critic approval rating with a 91% audience rating. When it comes to Letterboxd, quite frankly, I don't use it, so I don't know enough about it. I don't know where I would find how many people have reviewed them, but both movies do average out about a 4.0 on Letterboxd, and all the reviews have to be relatively recent, essentially when compared to Rotten Tomatoes, as Letterboxd has only been around as a company for about 10 years. However, when looking at Rotten Tomatoes, you can in fact see when the most recent reviews are. And while both of these movies do have reviews that have been published in the year 2022, Lost Highway has the most recent review, I believe, of both films, published 7 days before this movie, this Battleground was recorded. I believe Straight Stories was within a month previous of that. So both of these movies have still been watched by someone recently. In terms of the eligibility of reviewing, I do believe with Letterboxd, you just have to simply sign up in order to review. For Rotten Tomatoes, obviously, to be a critic reviewer, you have to have, I believe it's 5 years of consistent published reviews, either through written or video, to be accredited as a reviewer. In terms of being a fan reviewer, I do think you have to just sign up as well, although there is some kind of clearance in terms of if you're clearly trolling or posting other things, you can be removed. With all that said, though, I'm going to go to Austin first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point around, as concise as you can get it for me?
This is going to be a tough match. I can already tell because we're starting out with a banger here. Both had really good points going all the way into the debate portion. To me, Chad really had a lot of points, about his movie. Henry did as well. But in looking over my notes, I think that Chad really hit more of the underrated aspect as opposed to Henry. It seemed like it was more underseen kind of an aspect as opposed to sticking to the question underrated. And Chad's point about the recent Rotten Tomatoes stuff, people discovering Straight Story and talking about it as opposed to Lost Highway was kind of what sold it for me at the end. So I'm going to go with Chad.
All right, so the first vote does go to Chad. I'm going to go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
This is tough. Underrated is one of the overrated, underrated, one of the hardest ones to judge because underrated can also be argued as underseen. And both gentlemen had a lot of good points on both. It was going back and forth. To me, it ended up coming down to basically Henry trying to argue that Lost Highway is perfectly rated because it's not good, versus Chad trying to argue that Straight Story is not underrated because of the accolades it's gotten. And to me, I think the combination of Chad shooting himself in the foot, saying how low the scores were, with Henry backing up that not many people have seen it comparably. Very, very close, but I gave it to Henry.
All right, which means we will go to Madi for the breaker. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point? And you're muted just in case.
I was kind of hoping I didn't have to say anything, but all right, I guess I'll do something. No, I kind of agree with what Austin was saying. Is I heard more about, all right, people haven't seen it, but for me, that's not the same as underrated. And Chad was talking about, well, it's gotten this accolade, it was, got all this stuff coming for it. Whereas my movie is good, and just more people are seeing it now, and the reviews are coming up, but they're still a little bit lower. So that's why I went with use the full name Chadwick on my vote.
There we go. All right, guys, thank you so much. Great first round there on everyone's behalf. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys on the back and bring the competitors back in, as we will go ahead and move on to question number 2, which is, if there was ever a time to break out a different type of question in the Battleground, it is certainly a title match. And I can say, as the guy who writes 90% of these, we have not had a question like this. So let's see how it goes. Question number 2 is, who was the defining actor or actress of the 1950s?
You still didn't fix it.
A decade with a number of stars who have remained relevant to today. I mean, shit, if we're talking about films, wasn't the bulk of Elvis's acting career throughout the 50s, and we just had that movie come out, or was that the 60s? I don't fucking know. All I know is he got fat and died in the 70s. Either way, we are going to go ahead and get into this. Henry, you are up first, so time starts when you begin speaking, sir.
All right, so I feel like the most important thing about this question is that says defining actor or actress, which it's a typo on the bottom, but it's actor or actress, not celebrity. So my pick is hands down James Stewart. James Stewart is an actor who not only is one of the greatest of all time, but his run in the 1950s is just fantastic. I'm actually going to start with some of his lesser known films in terms of not maybe to film nerds, but the general audience. Winchester 73, Broken Arrow, which are both westerns, not what you expect from him. Harvey, which is a dramedy that discusses mental health, and James Stewart is so amazing that he was nominated for an Oscar. I'm doing the chat thing. I'm reading here. He was in a bunch of Hitchcock classics, including one of the lower ones, The Man Who Knew Too Much, which is a family thriller that he was not only able to showcase the thriller aspect, but he was able to be a family man. And then obviously we have the bangers of Anatomy of a Murder, Rear Window, and the aforementioned earlier Vertigo. James Stewart is one of the actors that just brings it at the end of the day. He's one of the actors that you think of in terms of any decade, specifically the 1950s, because of his run was just fantastic. Best actor of the 50s.
Time. And what typo, bro? What do you mean? What typo?
Guy.
All right, Chad, over to you. 1 minute, sir.
The defining actress of the 1950s is one who died young but accomplished much in her short time and leaves a long-lasting legacy. I picked Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn left such a huge impact not only in cinema but in fashion and pop culture in general. Some of the images of Marilyn in movies and in real life are iconic works of art. People often will hang up her pictures on the wall because she is a figurehead of a time gone by, the 1950s. She was so beautiful yet also so powerful. She set examples for women everywhere on how to be a legendary icon, but also how to have such a loud voice in a male-dominated industry such as cinema. She starred in so many classic films in the 1950s. She worked with so many different great filmmakers and worked across many different genres like thrillers, romantic comedies, dramas, and musicals. When she appeared in a film, it was like an angel gracing the screen. As Elton John said in Candle in the Wind, her candle burned out long before her legend ever did. Marilyn Monroe was the 1950s.
All right, and that looks like it's going to be time on Chad's opening. So we'll go back over to Henry. 2 minutes on the clock.
So my biggest thing with Marilyn Monroe is the first thing you think of her in general is the like you said, the picture of the wind blowing up. And guess what? Most people don't even know what movie that's from. That's from The 7-Year Itch. A lot of people think it's from Some Like It Hot, or they just generally don't know. They honestly might think it was legit from In the Street. It's from The 7-Year Itch, and that is one of the things that people just do not realize, because people do not think of Marilyn Monroe with films. When you think of her, top tier quote unquote banger, Some Like It Hot. Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon before Marilyn Monroe. When you think of Gentlemen Before Blondes, that's I'm pretty sure that's Gregory Peck, or whatever. It's not the point. When you think of James Stewart movies, you think of James Stewart. Granted, he was directed by Hitchcock, so it actually goes hand in hand. When you think of Rear Window and Vertigo, you think of James Stewart and you think of Hitchcock. But when you think of, I don't know, Anatomy of Murder, another movie that he was directed or that he was nominated for a lead actor, you think of James Stewart. When you think of Harvey, that gets referenced years and years later, literally in the Shawshank Redemption, figment of his imagination, like Harvey the Rabbit. It literally is brought up multiple times because of his performance in this movie. James Stewart is fantastic. He's able to cross multiple genres. He actually has actual acting abilities. Marilyn Monroe was a celebrity and, like you said, a pop culture icon, but that's pretty much it. In all of her movies, even the ones that were highly rated, she is not the thing that you think of at the end of it, other than her looks, which is fantastic. I'm all for it. I love a beautiful thick woman, but when you think of the defining actor or actress of the 1950s, she is just not it. James Stewart does a fantastic job. He was nominated for the 2 Oscars that I said, but he's in movies that are not only some of the best movies of the 1950s, but of all time. Rear Window and Vertigo are just movies that you think of as all-time bangers. But like I said, Anatomy of Murder, and even, like I said, the lower ones, Winchester 73, Broken Arrow, these are westerns that you would not think of, because when you think of James Stewart, you're like, oh yeah, he's just that guy that's in all the Hitchcock movies and all the thrillers, and he's just Hitchcock's muse. But no, he's been in other fantastic films of the 1950s. But when you think of like a defining decade, you think of maybe Pacino in the 70s, you think of like Leonardo DiCaprio in the 2010s, you think of James Stewart in the 1950s. You do not think of Marilyn Monroe except for that poster on your wall that you don't even know the movie that it's from.
And time. All right, Chad, back over to you, sir, for 2 minutes.
Jack Lemmon, Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn, and James Stewart were all, in some good movies in the 1950s. Marilyn Monroe, however, defined the 1950s. All those other actors had careers well before and well after the 1950s, but Marilyn built her career and nearly ended her career in the 1950s. Sadly, her life would end shortly after the decade as well. Coming from an orphanage and experiencing abuse as a child, Marilyn would go on to have a complicated life and career, but it was her dream to become an actress, and she did just that. Since almost her whole body of work was in the 1950s, you get to see her full evolution as an actress, icon, and legend. She worked with many great directors of the time, such as Joseph Mankiewicz, Fritz Lang, Howard Hawks, Laurence Olivier, and Billy Wilder. She starred in over 20 films in the decade, starting in the Best Picture, winning All About Eve, and going on to star in such classics as Clash by Night, Don't Bother to Knock, Monkey Business, Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch, Bus Stop, The Prince and the Showgirl, and the classic Some Like It Hot. As I said, the studios tried to typecast her as the dumb blonde, which she both did very well with and fought against, but they were also undervaluing her and underpaying her. Instead of just taking this lying down, she fought hard. Being the intelligent, strong woman she was, she quit the studio, created her own production company, all while being more popular than ever, forcing the studio to basically meet her demands. It's stuff like this that just made her such a legend. It wasn't just her beauty, even though that was a big part of it. In her films, though, you were just waiting until she graced the screen and started to sing. Her performances were amazing. She even got top billing over Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis in Some Like It Hot. Nobody was able to do it quite like her, and she has been imitated in films by so many different actresses who admire her. Soon, Ana de Armas will play her in the movie Blonde. Her legend still persists, and it's all because of the iconic work she did in the 1950s. Henry, just please don't try to regress the progress of women that we had by just saying that she's just a beautiful face, because she's actually a great actress. Thank you very much.
All right, that will do time on Chad's 2 minutes. We're going to go ahead and get into the 4-minute open debate. Will this be about movies? Will we wind up on CNN or your preferred affiliate about politics? Let's find out. Oh, it's just a joke. If we make CNN, I'd be proud of it anyways. We're going to go back to your 4 minutes on the clock when the first competitor speaks.
All right, so I want to start off. You said don't. She's a fantastic actress, that didn't have a single Oscar nomination her entire career.
Yeah.
In an era where a lot of women did have those. So that has nothing to do with the era. That has something to do with her acting abilities. I want to list off a few movies and just, I just want to get your opinion. You think of The Deer Hunter, Dog Day Afternoon, The Conversation, Godfathers 1 and 2. What is the first 5 things that come to your mind? Not John Cazale. That is an actor that, in theory, who is in fantastic movies, could be the defining actor of the 1970s, but he's not, because he is just not doing that. And that is my comparison with Marilyn Monroe. When you think of all these movies, you don't think of Marilyn Monroe. Yes, she is in some fine movies. No, you think of her maybe as a man who just wants to look at her and all that stuff. But when you think of the actual
star in like most of them,
yeah, she's in all of the ones that she is the headliner. They're the ones that no one watches. Some Like It Hot. She's definitely, even though you gave her top billed in Some Like It Hot, but maybe it could have been all those political things that you said before her thing. And it's one of those things, when you think of Marilyn Monroe, you think of her as a pop culture icon and a celebrity figure. When you think of James Stewart, you think of him as an acting icon, as the defining actor of the 1950s. He is an actor that doesn't have a biopic because no one could replicate her. You replicate Marilyn Monroe because it's kind of, like a gimmick. People are replicating Elvis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these types of things where they're just kind of being ditzy and but when he doesn't have a thing, but I'm just going with the mimicking portion. But you get my point, though. When you think of James Stewart as an actor, he portrayed Charles Lindbergh in The Spirit of St. Louis. He is an actor who has a vast, broad filmography, and he has acting chops to the T. Marilyn Monroe just does not have that.
Well, that's what I'm saying about James Stewart, though, is like, he did a lot of great work in the 1950s, sure, but like the classic films that people remember him for, not really. People remember him for are It's a Wonderful Life. You even have Rope before the 1950s. You have the Philadelphia Story.
No one's thinking of that.
They're not thinking of It's a Wonderful Life.
I give you one. I give you It's a Wonderful Life, but no one's thinking
that's his most famous movie. That
and
if you ask. No, look, if you ask anybody who's not like a huge film fan, they're probably not going to know anything about James Stewart other than It's a Wonderful Life. So,
okay,
the same thing you said about Marilyn Monroe.
Then that's a great combo. If you're going to ask people who are not, diehard film fans, they might not even know that she was in films. They're thinking of the lady who sung to JFK. They're thinking of that lady.
Yeah, you know why she sung to JFK? Because she was a popular singer in films, and people love
celebrity status.
And Gentlemen Prefer Blondes,
you know who's a popular singer in films?
Friend, that's why they wanted her to sing.
You know who's a popular singer in films?
Why wouldn't they just want her to sit down in front of and have a conversation with the president? Because they know her voice from movies. She's a popular singer from movies.
No, because they know her as a celebrity icon.
J-Lo, Some Like It Hot.
J-Lo, is she the defending actress of the 2000s? No, she's a fantastic. She's even a way better actress than Marilyn Monroe, but she's still not the defining actress of the 2000s. That's my point. I'm not degenerating her as a person. All I'm saying is the question is, what is the defining actor or actress of the 1950s?
Yeah, and she was an actress, exactly.
But this is movie Battleground. Everything that you're using as a supplement of your argument has something to do with celebrity status and iconic, personality.
Well, yeah, she became a legend because of her acting ability, because of the waves that she made in Hollywood as an actress.
What you're saying is she made waves. No, she made waves in Hollywood, but also happened to be an actress. That's the difference. James Stewart,
she
dominated the 1950s as an actor.
And she crushed it. I mean, you're comparing like both of the actors. They both had different experiences because they were both different.
One's an actor and one's a celebrity.
Simple. When you think of James Stewart movies in the 1950s, you don't think of James Stewart. You think of Alfred Hitchcock because he's the auteur of.
Then here's a great example.
When you think of It's a Wonderful Life.
When you think of Martin Scorsese in the 70s and 80s, do you not think of Robert De Niro? That just fell flat on its face. That was definitely weak.
And time. That was a lot. Best of luck, judges. All right, we're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Henry, you are up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So this is my favorite part of debate, when you go up against someone who's just throwing darts at the wall and they're just saying a bunch of random mess, just clickbaity stuff. And I get it. It's a strategy, and I totally respect that. But when you think of the question, what is the defining actor or actress of the 1950s? James Stewart is hands down that. When you think of maybe who was the defining celebrity of the 1950s? You're still probably going Elvis, but hey, maybe Marilyn Monroe could be a nice second. Marilyn Monroe is not a defining actor or actress of any decade, let alone the 1950s. Like I said, I did the comparison to John Cazale. So yes, they might have been in some quality films, but they're not the one you think of in that. In all the ones that you see Marilyn Monroe as the lead, she is not. Those are not the high quality movies, and anyone that you see that are the high quality movies, she's not the one that you're taking away from that. In Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, you're not thinking of her, you're thinking of Gregory Peck. When you think of Some Like It Hot, you're thinking of Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon way before her, and you're thinking of that closing line, which she's not even in that scene of Nobody's Perfect, all the iconic stuff. When you think of the 1950s, James Stewart was in Hitchcock films, yes, but it's James Stewart and Hitchcock as a duo. But you also have Anatomy of a Murder, you have Harvey, you have Winchester 73, you have Broken Arrow, and you have all these movies where he is the guy of the 1950s.
And time. All right, Chad, back over to you. One final minute on the round when ready. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, James Stewart was a good actor in the 1950s. So were a lot of people. Frickin' John Wayne was in the 1950s. I listed a bunch of other ones: Jack Lemmon, Marlon Brando, a lot of really great actors in the 1950s. I think when you think of his work, the movies that he did in the 1950s, you do just think of Alfred Hitchcock being amazing. And it doesn't matter who's in them. It's just Alfred Hitchcock being a really great director. That aside, it's no comparison to Marilyn Monroe, the legacy that she left behind because she was an actress. If she wasn't an actress, she doesn't leave this sort of legacy behind. It was because she's this fantastic actress that a lot of people love, want to dress like, want to watch her movies, watch her show up and sing and just be this like beautiful, just person that's just in this movie that just like seems like she's, this angel that is almost unattainable. And I think that's something that she accomplished, and the wave she made in Hollywood, the template that she set forward for many women after the future is just amazing.
And time. All right, guys, another excellent round there. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back and bring our judges in for this. Before we get to them, though, just a couple of small, quick fact checks. Both of these actors were incredibly prolific over the course of the 1950s. James Stewart was in 22 films between 1950 and 1959. Marilyn Monroe was in one more, 23 films between 1950 and 1959. She does have top billing in Some Like It Hot. What else was there? In terms of award success, Marilyn Monroe was not nominated for an Academy Award during her time. In terms of prestigious awards, her biggest probably honor would be she was a two-time BAFTA nominee for The 7-Year Itch and The Prince and the Showgirl, excuse me. In terms of James Stewart, though he did receive 5 Academy nominations over the course of his career and is a 2-time winner, once for The Philadelphia Story and then in 1985 as an honorary Lifetime Achievement Award. In the 50s, he was only nominated for 1 film in Harvey, and he did not win that nomination. And then in terms of pop culture, James Stewart has never, as far as I could find, has never been portrayed in a film by another actor, at least to a large enough extent that it would be worth noting. Marilyn Monroe, on the other hand, does have a lot of appearances in film, with obviously the aforementioned big upcoming one being Blonde by director Andrew Dominik and starring Ana de Armas on Netflix. And it's pronounced John Cazale. That is how the name of the actor is pronounced. All right, with that said, I'm gonna go up to you, sir. Who gets your vote and what's the main selling point?
Henry got this one for me. Chad had an uphill battle kind of from the start, and he did a really good job with a lot of the points that he came up with. But every time he came up with one, Henry knocked it down, coming up with the John Cazale point, the Scorsese and De Niro comparison with Hitchcock and James Stewart, and the kind of one that put the nail in for me that I was waiting to see if Chad could bring back was saying that Marilyn Monroe was an iconic person who happened to be in movies. Following up, didn't even know she was in The 7-Year Itch, didn't even know she was in that. So to me, Chad did a really good job trying to combat it, but I don't ever think he was able to get up that hill.
All right, and then Mehdi, down to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Morrow. I said Henry as well. A lot for the same points, but I think the other thing was that, it's not just about what their celebrity status was, it's about who's the defining actor. And had the question been worded, who's the defining face of the 50s, then sure, Chad's got probably the right answer, but because he focused on the acting and the actor/actress part, that's more why I gave it to Henry over Chad.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back, and we will go ahead and move into question number 3 here. We're going to be sticking with the decades talk, but we're going to be moving to a very different decade in which that's probably arguable to say neither of these actors were very prominent. One for unfortunately obvious reasons, but I don't think James Stewart. I don't think he was around very much in the 80s. Dude, I almost did that multiple times. It's bad. Anyways, question number 3 is, what is the best romantic comedy released in the 1980s? There was a decade full of great ones. We previously had a match between Kevin Poss and Will Cohen in which they argued over rom-com franchises, and one of them was from the 80s. So there's a lot of choices in here. And, after that intense battle, why don't we just sit back, relax, laugh a little bit, love a little bit, or not. It is called Battleground. Let's see what happens. With that said, Chad, you're up first. Time starts and you begin speaking.
The best romantic comedy released in the 1980s was the directorial debut of Mr. Cameron Crowe, Say Anything. Cameron Crowe has a knack for developing stories that are filled with everything you need in a romantic comedy. Great characters, funny situations, deep dramatic moments, awesome needle drops, and definitely romance. He made one of the best 90s romantic films with Jerry Maguire, did the same in the 2000s with Almost Famous. They have quotes often used at wedding proposals. He also wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High, so he knows how to capture the spirit of the 80s, which he also did in Say Anything. It has the classic 80s vibe, especially when they have such an iconic use of the Peter Gabriel's song In Your Eyes, a moment that is beloved and referenced all the time, such a romantic moment and played out with no dialogue. The romance in this film is one that you love because it is hot, but also loving and supportive. Lloyd and Diane make each other better people. Lastly, it's just a great film and definitely the best romantic comedy of the 1980s.
All right, that'll be it for the opening. Henry, back over to you. 1 minute on the clock when you start speaking.
So not only did I pick the best romantic comedy of the 1980s, I arguably picked the best romantic comedy of all time, When Harry Met Sally. This is a movie that has the romantic leads in the title. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan have fantastic chemistry, and it showcases that not only do you need to genuinely build up a relationship through friendship, but sometimes speaking, if you don't want to, because of whatever reason, you have personal issues, behind the scenes of, past trauma with relationships, you have that one ex that's kind of like holding you down, you're waiting for them, or you're just kind of a player as being a man. It showcases that you can adjust if you find the one. When Harry Met Sally is a movie that just has fantastic chemistry. It is a romance true and through because it starts out with the friendship, and it actually is uplifting in terms of what you're looking for as an ideal relationship in the history. It has one of the most iconic lines in film history, let alone from a romance movie, let alone from a romance movie of the 1980s. I'll have what she's having because it showcases the fantastic chemistry between Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal in the diner scene of the faking the orgasm, because not only is it showing the romance, but it's showing both sides from the male perspective as well as the female within that relationship.
And time. All right. Chad, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock.
If you're going to compare When Harry Met Sally and Say Anything, there are so many things that elevate Say Anything as a film. The story is better, the romance is better, the music is better, the characters are better. I love how Say Anything treats its main characters, but also its secondary characters. They feel like real people you would know, whereas When Harry Met Sally's side characters just kind of feel like they're there to give Harry and Sally somebody to talk to about themselves. When Harry Met Sally also starts with this whole hypothesis that men and women can't be friends because sex gets in the way. And then the movie goes on to end with Harry and Sally getting together. It is basically confirming that men and women can't be platonic friends, which ignores gay people and is just a ridiculous notion. And Say Anything, Lloyd has platonic relationships with girls, and they are very sweet, but they support each other. The romance in When Harry Met Sally feels forced, like they have nobody else to be with and time is running out. So they have to end up just settling for each other. It's like the pact that you make with somebody where you say, if you're not married by age 40, let's get together. That's not romantic. The romance in Say Anything is amazing. The whole movie, everybody is asking Diane, why would you go out with Lloyd Dobler? And she ends up telling her father it's because he makes her feel safe and he protects her. He also helps her see how manipulative her dad is and helps her confront him while also allowing her to stand up for herself. Diane also supports Lloyd by relieving his anxieties and comforting him with that Peter Gabriel song. That's why Lloyd returns the favor later with the boombox as to say he loves her and he's there for her when she's going through a rough time. It doesn't need any dialogue to convey that, just brilliant filmmaking. When Harry Met Sally is mostly just dialogue. It's a lot of people arguing with each other and having random conversations. You definitely need to be in the right mood for that. Say Anything is just a fun, amazing, any old time. There's a party where Lloyd helps Diane loosen up, and some funny moments there, like Lloyd telling Jeremy Piven he needs to chill, and Lloyd's best friend Carrie playing 65 breakup songs for her ex-boyfriend Joe. And that's just one great part of the movie that shows why it is the best.
And time. All right, Henry, back over to you.
I'm not even gonna give you the satisfaction of acknowledging all that bullshit you said at the first 10 seconds of that. But everything with Harry Met Sally, it actually showcases the real life dynamic of a relationship. It shows Billy Crystal's Harry side of being a man, being a player, and the dynamic of not wanting to kind of settle down in your early 20s, post college, all that stuff. And it deals with Meg Ryan's side of kind of being used and abused by men. So the juxtaposing though, I always say that word, you juxtapose those two relationships and how you're able to have that dynamic and their buildup. The reason they have that pact in the 40s, because guess what? At the end of the day, if you're going to get married, you want to be with someone that you can spend the rest of your life with. Even if it's not true love, you have the two people that you're like, hey, we can tolerate each other and we want to spend the life together. So worst case scenario, we will get married together. But at the end of it, they truly have that true trajectory of getting there. And you have the side characters, knowingly Carrie Fisher of just the best friend. So not only does it have the point of view of your two leads from both the player side and the romantic male side, the hurt female side, as well as the lovable female side, but you also have the two best friends, specifically Carrie Fisher, and just how they're able to support and love, and you're really able to be there in that. Say Anything is a movie that is solid. I'll give you that. But at the end of the day, everything that you get, the highlights of this film are a coming of age film, everything with Lloyd and Diane of you going to England. Because the best parts of that movie is Lloyd kind of being goofy and wanting to kickbox and kind of like court her, which courting isn't really the romance. That's kind of just a movie that you can have any type of movie of a guy trying to get with a girl, and everything with Diane, both with the relationship with her father as well as the England side plot of what you're going to do. So the best parts of this movie are more coming of age family dramas, and the romance is in the background. I'm not trying to get into bullshit. It passed. I'm not trying to get with that, but I'm saying if you're trying to say what is the best romantic comedy of the 1980s, you want the romance to be at the forefront. And When Harry Met Sally is a romance from through and through, because it showcases the start, the foundation of a relationship through friendship. And in this specific story, that it's not saying that all relationships have to be physical and all that stuff, but in this specific one, even if you take your time and you're patient and you just want to be friends, true love will find its way, and that's why Harry met Sally and fell in love.
All right, and that's time. We're going to go ahead and get into the 4-minute open discussion.
Bro.
The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
So I'll give you a second to deal with that cat. You said you have to You said you have to be in the mood to watch When Harry Met Sally. That is just not true, and I love it. Once again, throwing darts, I get it.
That's true.
On the inverse, you actually have to be in the mood with the Say Anything, because it's more of a family drama. You have to be able to handle the fact that there's a whole subplot of her father fucking over old people and all that stuff. And when you're going into a romantic comedy, you don't really want to deal with that type of stuff. When you go in, all the emotional aspects of When Harry Met Sally has to do with the relationship between them. You have Billy Crystal's Harry with full tears. You have Meg Ryan with full tears. The scenes with the side-by-sides when they're talking on the phone, how relatable is that when you're just talking on the phone and you don't want to hang up because you're just truly in love, or when you do hang up and you're just sitting there in silence wishing that you did it. That's what Harry Met Sally brings. Everything with Say Anything, it's a coming of age. It's getting to that first step to Say Anything walked so When Harry Met Sally could run.
I mean, they both came out in the same year, so I don't think like,
It's an analogy.
anything,
It's a
there's
metaphor.
anything.
Good
Okay,
point.
whatever. Anyways, no, the points about like my movie is like different genres and stuff like that. Yeah, it is. It does have different genres in it while also being a romantic comedy. I know you said like it counts, so you're not going to knock against that. Fair. I appreciate that. But I think the drama bits, the coming of age bits, it all works for the romance because the romance is at the forefront of Say Anything. It basically the relationship between Lloyd and Diane is strengthened because of what Diane has to go through. Like she's on this path to becoming basically entirely manipulated by her father. She could be destroyed. She could lose her English scholarship. She could do all this stuff if she would have stayed like on that path. But, and being afraid of even going on an airplane, her father was going to help her with that. But Lloyd comes in, helps her realize that her father is super problematic. But also not like being, overbearing and stuff like that. I feel like that's where, Harry to me is a little overbearing in this movie. You may disagree with that, but like when they have sex,
progression.
When I'm saying, well, no, it's towards the end he's overbearing. Like when, they're basically, they have sex and then they agree not to, talk anymore or whatever they agree to. He keeps calling her over and over. And I'm like,
oh, are you telling me Lloyd didn't literally leave 25 voicemails to Diane when she wasn't answering the phone? She literally broke up and he called her. He literally stood outside her window when they were broken up. The out of context scene of that boom. This is the first time I watched this movie. So I was actually really shocked at how this scene played out. He's outside with the boombox. I was ready to cry. I was ready to be so, enthralled and happy about it. She literally ignores him. Sure, it has an underlying message of it, but that's this entire movie is of a coming of age movie. I want to give you 2 examples and I'll let you talk. Okay. 2 examples. Right. You mentioned Almost Famous because of his, because of the comedy. There's romance in the movie, but you think of it as a music drama. And when you think of one of the most popular movies of all time, The Graduate, it has 2 romances within that film, but at the end of the day, it's a coming of age movie because it's about the story. Say Anything is about these 2 characters with a romantic plot that brings the 2 side family drama stuff together. Romance just connects them technically.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. Romance is the connector. It's the forefront of the movie. To go back to talk about, first of all, I haven't mentioned that John Cusack is the amazing lead of this movie. I think he's fantastic. I love the John Cusack, Joan Cusack, connection. They're always great together. But to what you said about, he doesn't like sit there and like call her. In fact, what he does is he might leave like one message, something like that, but he does go over and he does do the boombox, but it's not there to pester her. It's there to show her that he still loves her. And then she comes back to him and says, while he's kickboxing and says, I love you. I want you back. I realized that, it was my dad that was causing all of these issues. And it's such a sweet romance that they have together. While I just feel like Harry and Sally, they're just like terrible people for the entire movie. And they realize nobody else wants to be with us. We might as well just, I guess, be together. The ending really falls flat and doesn't really feel romantic to me.
Time. All right. We are going to go into the 1-minute closings. Chad, you are up first. When ready.
Say Anything is just the best romantic comedy of the 1980s. I mean, it has all the elements that you need. There's barely any like music in When Harry Met Sally. I feel like a lot of the iconic 80s music that you have really helps us feel like a great 80s comedy. A lot of the really comedic moments, like, the graduation scene. Like I said, Corey playing the 65 songs for Joe. That character also gets like her own agency and actually turns Joe away when he just wants to have sex with her. The side characters have like these really great moments that elevate this film from just like a one thing focused on Harry and Sally. And, the side characters don't even really matter. Who cares about them? But really it's focused on the relationship. It's focused on, the characters. I love the final scene when they are on the plane and Lloyd and Diane are there. She's so concerned about the plane crashing or something going wrong. And he's like, no, as soon as this, seatbelt light goes on, we're good. They're there for each other. That's what matters.
And time. All right, Henry, back over to you. 1 final minute.
So I've said everything I really need to say about Say Anything, but I want to touch on you. You said my movie doesn't have iconic music, but your movie is literally manipulating with that music and all that stuff. So, whatever, that's actually not the true, genuine romance. When Harry Met Sally is a movie that starts off with them randomly going carpooling to make a trip, to meeting years later at the airport and kind of coming together. It's a story of like fate and destiny of how they're meant to be, and they have different vibes and they have different ultimate goals at their times in life. But that's what's more relatable about this film is regardless of what stage you are in life, you can finally find someone, whether it's in your early 20s, in college, whether it's later at the airport, whether you're meeting an ex, you're at a party and all this stuff. When Harry Met Sally showcases that regardless of where you are in life, you can find the one. Harry and Sally are going through their different stages of life together in time, and that's why they make that pact of we're not with each other by 40, because at the end of the day they've been low key with each other from day one because of that relationship you have. When you think of a romance film, you think of When Harry Met Sally from any era, not just the 1980s. When you think of a solid character drama, you might think of Say Anything.
All right, and that is going to be time. Go ahead and sit you guys in the back and bring in our judges on screen as we will go ahead and get into this. So not a lot of fact check here, but the only thing is that these movies, weird, I give you guys a whole decade and you pick movies that came out 3 months apart from each other. Say Anything and When Harry Met Sally came out in 1989. Say Anything was first in April. When Harry Met Sally was in July. So I think it'd be a tough call to say that one did inspire the other, but as Henry said, he was just trying to use the metaphor. So I don't know, maybe don't hold that completely against him. With that said, Mehdi, I'm going to shoot up to you. Time starts, or you're not being judged here. Just as concise as you can hit it for me. Who gets your vote?
Neither of them, because this is the correct answer. Mario said Coming to America. Coming to America is number 2. You guys are stupid. Okay, I'm going to go with... Jesus. All right. And it was Rob Reiner too. You were right there. All right. I'm going with Chadwick. I think he focused more on the fact that the romance between them was more quote unquote healthy throughout the movie, and how although Henry called it bullshit, saying disregarding gay people and having platonic friendships. Yeah, that's a part that does come up, and it doesn't hold up as well. I also wanted Henry to bring up the concept that you're not just focusing on the main two's romance. You also have the side characters of Carrie Fisher, as well as like the random couples that they bring on like every 20 minutes in that movie. But I just heard more from Chad about why Say Anything was more of a quote-unquote pure romance between the two of them that also was quite funny, instead of having it be, all right, yeah, it's a great movie. Sort of, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just mad that they didn't break Princess Bride.
It's okay, man. You got about 13 minutes or so you have to speak again. So breathe in anger now. Austin, I'm gonna shoot down to you next. Who gets your vote? What was the main?
Yeah, it was really back and forth. Again, another good round. For me, this one, I felt like Henry had a really good point about Say Anything, putting the coming of age stuff more at the forefront than the rom-com stuff, and the romance was at the forefront, and that it really was focused on that the whole movie. And also I just thought he had a really, really strong closing argument, and Chad would just kind of went off on a tangent on the music. So I thought I went with Henry actually.
Okay, so we have a split, which means we go over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I have not seen either of these movies, so definitely went still giving Coming to America the win though. But it really went based off the arguments for me. And for me, I'm going with the person who convinced me more of the romance and everything. And even though he tried to bring up the coming of age, I think Chad did a really good job of how the coming of age and how all of the other aspects were able to make it a romantic comedy, and a better romantic comedy at that. So I went with Chad.
All right. We'll go ahead and drop everybody in the back. Actually, fuck it. Austin, what would your pick have been, since everybody's given their opinions today?
I don't like rom-coms, so none of them.
Okay, all right. So everybody's got a different opinion.
I don't like Princess Bride. Coming to America is a comedy.
I'm going to go with Die Hard.
We're going to start another debate before we even go.
We're going to cane all of you guys off stage. And bring the actual debaters back in, as we will go ahead and move on to question number 4. And it's almost a beautiful setup that this is our 4th question, because we've had so much emphasis on performance tonight, and we've had so much emphasis on directors and performances tonight, that why not just fucking ask the question? It is, What is the best performance in a film directed by Quentin Tarantino? A man known for delivering performances. Hell, he has the reputation of single-handedly, through his production and a performance, resurrecting careers. Not that Travolta's has gone very far, or whatever happened to Jennifer Jason Leigh after Hateful Eight, or well, okay, they don't make it very far, but temporarily they are resurrected. And so with that said, we're going to get into it. Henry, you are back up first on this go around, so I'll give you the timer, and you can give me some words when ready.
All right. So when you think of Quentin Tarantino and you think of acting performances, you think of Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Basterds. Hands down, it's not even a debate. This is a performance in the film that steals the show in a movie, in a character that is not of the titular character of the Bastards. This is a character in Hans Landa that when he's not on screen, you're just wishing that he was. He starts off the film with his opening, menacingness of his performance, of starting off of like, hey, I'm just here to, do some work, blah, 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 to a point of point down to them. You're hiding Jews, point to them. Blah, blah, blah. And it just gets to a point where he just able to switch on the dime. He has little things of he wants to drink the milk. He wants to have his big old pipe. This is a performance that when you think of the career of Christoph Waltz, it is actually really disappointing because of the fact that he peaked with his main breakout performance in Inglourious Basterds. Any performance that you see later in his career, you're just upset that it's not this, because it is not only the best of his career, but it's clearly the best of Tarantino's filmography, who has amazing performances that my opponent is even going to bring up. But Waltz as Landa is number one.
And time. All right. Despite Henry's insistence that this is not a debate, this is quite literally a debate. So, fair play to everyone. Chad, back over to you, sir. 1 minute on the clock.
Quentin Tarantino is a legendary director with so many great films and so many great performances in them. I picked a performance from maybe his most underrated film. I picked Pam Grier, who plays Jackie Brown in Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is adapted from a novel called Rum Punch, but Tarantino switched the main role to be a woman so Pam Grier could play the lead and make the name Jackie Brown to be similar to a blaxploitation character she played in the 1970s called Foxy Brown. Pam Grier basically dominates Jackie Brown, giving a full performance showing the highs and lows of this character, and she dominates every scene against other veteran actors like Sam Jackson, Michael Keaton, Robert Forster, and Robert De Niro. It's just such a hard thing for an actor to make the transition from blaxploitation films to mainstream Hollywood, and Pam Grier did it because of her talents as an actress. She was snubbed for an Oscar for this performance since she carried this film and dominated every scene she is in, which is most of them. Pam Grier gave the best performance in any Quentin Tarantino film.
All right. So we have Christoph Waltz versus Pam Grier, the Jew Hunter versus Jackie Brown. Safe to say he wouldn't be hunting her. Jackie Brown does not sound like a Jew person's name. With that said, Henry, back over to you. That was actually a horrible joke. God help me. Good God, sometimes the things I say. Henry, over to you, sir. 2 minutes to shut me up.
I agree. Jackie Brown, super underrated as a film. I agree. Maybe she was snubbed as an Oscar performance, but guess what? That is the thing that's one of those things that we're thinking of arguably underrated when we think of Christoph Waltz as Han Landa in Inglourious Basterds. He did win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and like I said, when he's not on screen, you wish he was. Honestly, you didn't even pick the best performance in your movie. Samuel L. Jackson steals that show, and he's not the title character. He's actually equivalent of the Hans Landa of this movie, of not being the title character and stealing the show. Every time that Samuel L. Jackson is on screen, he is menacing and he's terrifying, and you are sad when he's not on screen. He actually uplifts Pam Grier's performance in this film because she's actually mellow and chill for most of it, and that's actually good in terms of technical acting, but in terms of the best overall acting performance movie-wide, that's just not it in Pam Grier as Jackie Brown. Hans Landa is a character that he speaks multiple languages, Italian, French, and German, and Christoph Waltz does all of those. He's one of those things where he's completely funny and completely terrifying. Like I said, when you think of Christoph Waltz's career, not only with specifically Tarantino, but his entire career, you think of Inglourious Basterds as the first thing that comes to my mind. And when you think of Tarantino's filmography and you ask people what is their favorite Tarantino film, the people that say Inglourious Basterds, it's because of Hans Landa, not because of the titular Bastards. Hans Landa just steals the show, and he just maintains everything that you're going on, and he actually has the comeuppance by the end of it, because he flips it on a dime. That's a bingo and all that stuff of flipping on the Germans and ending the war and kind of rewriting history of a German doing that. But but at the end of the day, he gets his comeuppance, and you're satisfied that because of how terrifying and fantastic his performance is in that film. Pam Grier, like I said, she does a good job of, maintaining that, or, portraying that character of what you're looking for from the script of Pam Grier as Jackie Brown in Jackie Brown, but she doesn't uplift it. She doesn't go off. She works off of other actors. When she works off of Ray Nicolette, that's when she has all the moments of all that. When she works off of Ordell Roby, that's all that. She works off of these characters. She doesn't really steal the show of being the front and center, despite being the titular and it being at the cover. Whereas Hans Landa, he is the guy in Tarantino films of all of them.
And time. All right, Chad, back over to you for the 2-minute portion.
Pam Grier gives a full performance in Jackie Brown with so much range. When she is falling in love with Robert Forster, she shows so much vulnerability at her situation with trying to make ends meet and being undervalued at her dead-end job. Ordell, played by Samuel L. Jackson, thinks Jackie Brown is weak. However, in a scene where he's going to kill Jackie, Pam Grier shows him why he was mistaken. She threatens him, strikes fear into his heart, and tells him what's going to happen. So yeah, who upstage who? It's Pam Grier upstaging Sam Jackson in there. To see the contrast between such vulnerability and such strength is why Pam Grier shows she is the best and why Tarantino chose her specifically. She's also able to show so many emotions: love, affection, vulnerability, panic, fear, anger, and righteousness. When she has to go undercover with plans of screwing over both the police and Ordell, she has to show both strength and vulnerability because she's scared and determined at the same time. Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa is a good villain in Inglourious Basterds. If this question was the best villain performance, then I could see his being ranked higher, but I'd still go with Leonardo DiCaprio and Django for villain performance. Leo shows more range and captures the screen more. But Christoph Waltz, in comparison, is pretty fun. Is pretty one note in Bastards. He does the whole wolf in sheep's clothing thing, but it's just one thing. He doesn't really show any range. Bastards is so great with perfect writing, direction, blocking, and everything else that the filmmaking lifts the performances up and not the other way around. Like how Jackie Brown's performance makes that film better. She's also in the movie way more than Waltz is in his, and she is doing more things, showing more range. Pam Grier is a force in Jackie Brown, while Waltz is just another good actor moving to the beat in Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece, Inglourious Basterds. Pam Grier dominates every single scene to make the other veteran actors follow her lead, while Christoph Waltz is mostly following a script against lesser-known actors, which is not as challenging. And I'd even say, I think probably like Brad Pitt maybe, or Michael Fassbender. There's so many great actors in Inglourious Basterds. You can't even really pick one in that movie because it's such a great movie. But Pam Grier is easily the best in her movie. Boom.
And time. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into the 4-minute discussion. Timer starts when the first competitor speaks.
So I love how you just threw some, once again, darts at the wall as you name drop Brad Pitt, Michael Fassbender, Leonardo DiCaprio, trying to demonstrate with performances. No, but I like that. I want to start off. I wrote a bunch of notes of things you said that were bullshit. One note, first of all, he speaks 3 different languages. He's menacing. He's terrifying. He's funny. That's
speaking language is not a range of an actor.
It is one of those where it actually showcases within the film the scene, the Italian scene when they're infiltrating the theater and they're like, we speak Italian, we're the cameraman. He's like, oh yeah, and he goes off on his Italian tangent, and the fear in the eyes of, or the dumbfounded looks in Brad Pitt's eyes.
Yeah, they're great. I love Brad Pitt. Yeah, and I was able to show that fear.
Oh, so you're saying how their reaction, just like Jackie Brown in that
Christoph Waltz.
A great example that you have. Yeah, it does a good one. The scene at the very end of the movie when Brad Pitt shoots him and his fear in his face because he thought he had won. He's like, I did that for that man's life. And then when he cuts the thing, the actual fear, good try. But what you said with Jackie Brown,
he has like a little bit.
You said he has no range, and every time that I'm bringing up his range, now you're like, oh, maybe it's just a little. No, you literally said none. So I want to touch on everything.
There's no range in his character.
That's fair. I respect you trying. So everything that you said with the Jackie Brown scene when she puts the fear in Ordell, she's literally holding a gun to his dick. So yes. Anyone in the history, you could go into a Tarantino film right now with your acting abilities and put a gun to someone's dick, and they're going to be fearful. That had nothing to do with her performance. So, in everything you said, she's more vulnerable. Hans Landa has the vulnerability in that scene and the subtlety. You know the scene when he has the shoe with Shoshana and he has, or with the actress, I can't think of her name right now because we're on the debate. Don't judge me for that. But when he has the subtlety, when he has the shoe and he subtlety brings it out, but right before he chokes her, he really builds that up. The scene with the pie scene, the whole fear of him just going in there and having that speech and just the look in the eyes. inflicts that fear of all these characters because of what he shows. But the opening scene showcases the range of emotion of being comedic, being subtle, and being fearful all in one scene. So the no range is bullshit. You said she has the love, the relationship between her and Robert Forster. That's because he is a powerhouse of an actor, and he is where you're getting all that emotion from. She just feeds off of that. Hans Landa, when you think of Inglourious Basterds, you think of Hans Landa, not the bastard. When you think of Jackie Brown, honestly, you don't even think about it. So I respect you, and I totally backing you up on it's underrated, and even her performance is underrated. But when you're thinking of what is the best performance in a film directed by Quentin Tarantino, Jackie Brown's just not it. It's a good performance, but it's not the best because not what you think of. When you think of Hans Landa, that is what you think of all characters, specifically in a Tarantino movie.
Oh, I disagree. I mean, you think of the great, like I said, the great direction, the great everything in Inglourious Basterds. It's just a great movie, and Christoph Waltz is somebody that is grateful to be in that movie because it did start his career. And then I think he was arguably probably better in Django. I feel like he's been able to show more range in that film to work off of other great actors like Jamie Foxx and Leo DiCaprio in that movie. He shows a lot of range in that. But with like I said, he's one note in Inglourious Basterds. There's like 2 moments that he shows a little bit more, but mostly it's just that same just smile. And that's it. That's really all he does is just smile and says the words that Quentin wrote. And Jackie Brown, you get to see everything with Jackie Brown. You get to see her desperation. You get to see her vulnerability, her strength, her panic, like all of this stuff, all of the emotion in the movie. She carries this entire film. Every scene she's in, you're like, oh shit, Jackie Brown is finally in a scene. This is going to be amazing. You think at first she's not going to be, a strong character. And then she throws down because immediately she's given so much sass to the police, which is really great. But then she's like super, vulnerable when she finally realizes that they
sass
have,
is considered great range
found.
in acting. But speaking different languages, that contradicts that stuff. That I would rather be able to. You said that she has good sass, and you're crediting her of that, but you just said that speaking different languages is not range and acting.
Well, that's not a language.
That contradicts itself.
I didn't say sass was a language. Anyways,
but you said it's a characteristic.
And time. All right, we are going to go into the 1-minute closings. Henry, you are up first when ready.
All right, so like I said, when you think of a Quentin Tarantino movie, a performance, you think of Hans Landa hand down. It's the first one you think of. Like I said, when he's not on screen, you wish he was. He's literally in a movie that's called The Inglourious Basterds, but you want Hans Landa to be on screen every time. When you think of Jackie Brown, she is a character that, like you just said, everything that you tried to say against Hans Landa, she's reading all the scenes in the movie. The one time that she has the master plan, the actual acting abilities has nothing to do with it performance-wise, because the question is, what is the best performance, not what is the best character even. So when you think of how all of her uplifting moments and all stuff, that is script based. Whereas specifically in Hans Landa and Christoph Waltz's performance, he has the range of speaking the multiple language. He has the range of inflicting fear into the side characters. He has the range of being funny, being sarcastic. That's a bingo is a meme and a gift that people use all the time because of how memorable it is. That is a film. That is a character that when you think of in the entire Quentin Tarantino filmography, the reason that people are saying that he's getting better with time is because he's able to write these characters. And Hans Landa does Christoph Waltz does a fantastic job of embodying Hans Landa. And later on in his career, you wish that he had that. He was Blofeld, but he wasn't Hans Landa.
All right. We're going to go to Chad for the final minute of the round.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting here talking about how, he's great as Hans Landa, and it's a meme. Yeah, it's a meme. I mean, it's something that people remember because of the meme of it. It's not necessarily his acting. And like you said, the career after that is kind of disappointing. That's because he's not in other movies, except for Django, where he's also elevated by Quentin Tarantino's writing and direction. Everything else is just kind of there and disappointing. With Jackie Brown, the critical consensus from Rotten Tomatoes says, although somewhat lackadaisical in pace, Jackie Brown proves to be an effective star vehicle for Pam Grier while offering the usual Tarantino wit and charm. When the best thing about Jackie Brown is often said to be Pam Grier's performance, you have something special there. In contrast, the critical consensus for Bastards doesn't even mention Waltz because he's just another face in a great ensemble, whereas Pam Grier leads her film, giving us the vulnerable, sweet, lovable Jackie Brown who is hard on her luck, and the strong, confident, badass Jackie Brown who is going to do something about it. Pam Grier is a tour de force in Jackie Brown.
And time. All right. Guys, we're going to go ahead and sit you in the back and go ahead and bring our judges on screen. Mehdi will be with us in just one sec. He was here for the entirety of the round, but just had a disconnect right at the end there. So wait for him. There he is. All right. So we'll go ahead. Just a couple of small fact checks. In terms of Academy nominations, the only acting nomination from *Inglourious Basterds* was for Christoph Waltz in the form of Best Supporting Actor. He did win that award. Jackie Brown only had one Academy Award in total for its film. It was for Best Supporting Actor for Robert Forster. So yes, Pam Grier was not nominated. In *Inglourious Basterds*, a grand total of 3 languages are spoken throughout the film: English, German, and French. Christoph Waltz does speak all of them throughout the film in his performance. I can verify that Jackie Brown's description on Rotten Tomatoes does directly mention Pam Grier. *Inglourious Basterds* does not mention Waltz. And the actress you were thinking of for Bridget von Hammersmark is Diane Kruger. With that said, we are going to go to the judges. Austin, up to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main point?
I'm starting to regret my decision to judge this one. All right. All right. So this one was, again, another fire round. Both guys were really laid out their arguments for both of them. There was a point early that Chad threw out there that I don't think ever got thrown back about Pam Grier standing up and holding her own against the other actors of a higher caliber, maybe. And in the scenes with Sam Jackson, with Forrester, with Keaton and stuff, that, and his point about Christoph Waltz maybe already being above the others and it being easier to overcome that and stand out as opposed to that point really stuck with me, and he kind of hammered that. So I went with Chad.
All right, which means I'm going to go down to Amaru next. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point? And you are muted. There you go.
I just sighed because this one was very tough. I think I'm gonna just stick with a point that I guess at the very beginning kind of confused me, and then came back afterwards because it's literally 50-50 on this. And at the beginning, Chad had said something about Quentin Tarantino brought her in for to do a black exploitation film, and then turned around like 30 seconds later saying getting away from exploitation or vice versa, or something of that matter. And then from then on out, it was literally back and forth. Everybody was able to counter something from the other side. So by the very slimmest of margins, just because there was that point that I was like, wait, you kind of contradicted yourself there. I went with Henry. I think.
All right, which means we're going to. By the way, I just have to throw out there now that you have judged. It's the small things that make me enjoy these, and the look on your face when somebody actually said Jackie Brown was incredible. By the way, thank you for that. Mehdi, over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the selling point?
Fuck. I'll be honest, I almost changed my mind like 4 times while the other judges were talking because I was like, this is nuts. And because I know Henry loves Jackie Brown, this makes it. I'm also going to go with Henry just because, it's hard to argue against that Hans Landa performance. It was such a brilliant performance. And Chad, I have to disagree with you when you said that speaking multiple languages isn't a character thing. It kind of is. It's showing how in tune that specific character was. And Henry did come back with that, and that really was one of the small points that shifted the needle. But like I said, ask me in like 10 seconds, I'll probably change my mind. But for right now, I'm going with Henry.
All right. Well, it is a title match for a reason. These guys are bringing it, and judges, you're doing a great job of facilitating it all. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back because we are done with the main 4, which means we are moving into the unknown. We are moving on to rounds 5 and 6, the blind round. Now, for those of you who have not been here for a title match before, the title matches incorporate every aspect of Battlegrounds. In normal matches, blind round is the sudden death. However, here it is just another round. So the way that this works is these are going to be questions that these guys have zero indication of where they're going, what they are going to be. I'm going to start by naming a general prompt, which they will then answer within the refines of the prompt, and then we will reveal the actual question. Whether or not they agree that their answer agrees with the question, they will have to do their best to debate it. And as we have seen before, there have been plenty of examples where someone can argue the opposite of what they feel and still win. Now, in title matches, there are going to be 2 blind round questions. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to answer both now, and then I'm going to let you guys go off screen for a few minutes and prep these questions. With that said, do you guys have any questions for me, or are we ready to go?
Good.
Ready?
Okay. All right. And as always, just in case there isn't one instinctively that comes to your mind, you guys are allowed to do a quick Google search just for your reflection. So, question number 1, in honor of this, believe it or not, for people who don't know at home, being the 100th match of Movie Battleground, I thought I would throw it back to, I believe, the first question from the very first match, or in terms category. Name me a Matt Damon film released in the 2000s.
The Departed.
Okay. So, The Departed is Henry's answer.
I'll say Invictus.
Invictus. All right. Moving on. The second blind round question will be, name me a sequel or prequel made by Pixar.
Monsters University.
All right. Monsters University.
Apologies. Let me look real quick. I'll go Toy Story 4.
And Toy Story 4. Okay. All right, gentlemen, your 2 blind round questions are going to be for the battle of Invictus versus The Departed. What is the worst Matt Damon film of the 2000s? And for Monsters University versus Toy Story 4, what is the best sequel or prequel film made by Pixar? Now, with that said, for those of you watching at home, you guys are only going to have to wait about 20 seconds or so before these start. Enjoy the elevator music. Here, we're going to give these guys a couple of minutes to put some notes together. We will be back with the blind round. All right, guys, we are back and ready to go into this blind round. As a reminder for everyone down at the bottom, the score is currently tied 2-2, which means at the minimum, both of these questions will be played. And as a reminder for those at home, the first question, the second question, which we'll get to in just a moment, is what is the best sequel or prequel made by Pixar, with Monsters University and Toy Story 4 being the answers. The question at hand now is, what is the worst Matt Damon film of the 2000s, inspired by, as I said, I believe the very first question of the first Battleground match we did at the relaunch. We are now at the 100th episode. It's a huge honor, and you guys have been bringing it so far for a 100th episode. So we'll go ahead and get into it. We're going to be keeping the same pattern, as I said before, on these questions. So, Chad, you are up first on this one as I go ahead and bring the timer back in. Once again, best of luck, guys. Chad, when ready.
Well, I mean, in the 2000s with Matt Damon, you get to see a lot of really great things, actually. Like, he started like doing the Bournes. He was like really, doing really great stuff in action, and people like kind of didn't really expect that from him. And then he was in, The Departed, and that was like really fantastic. He was in a lot of like really, really great stuff. But one movie that I think really missed the mark was one that I think you've seen me pick. It was Invictus. With Invictus, it's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like one of those movies that's supposed to be like really great performances. One of those things that the Oscars probably would really love as like a Oscar baity type of thing. But the movie's just really, really slow. It tries to do all this like, stuff about racism. I feel like Clint Eastwood's not really the best kind of guy to tell that kind of story, with, being like uber conservative, stuff like that. Not to get too political, but, I really think they're trying to do like this whole big performance thing over story, and it's just really not that a good movie at all.
All right, we're going to go over to Henry. You are muted, sir.
See, I never do that. I only do it just because we were doing the behind the scenes stuff. All right. Matt Damon is an actor. When you think of his career, you're thinking of him kind of just as the fun, lovable guy who just kind of randomly came out of nowhere and did the aforementioned Bourne franchise. But when you think of him as a character, you want him to be, generally speaking, that lovable, relatable everyman. And that we don't get that in The Departed. The Departed is a movie that is just an overbloated mess directed by a famous director, and that is pretty much the only reason it got any acclaim. It is a movie that, yes, in fact, did win Best Picture, but it's one of those movies where it's kind of an award for a career, not for specifically this movie. Like I said, it's an overcomplicated plot, a bunch of characters you just don't care about, a bunch of over the top, accents and everything that just comes off as parody instead of being a serious drama. The reason that Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and Raging Bull are so acclaimed within Scorsese's filmography is because of the true acting and the realism. And even though you don't celebrate the crime in Goodfellas, you respect it. In The Departed, it's just a parody, and it's overbloated and just a mess.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 2-minute portion of the debate. Chad, you're up.
Would you say The Departed? Oh shit, that Departed is fantastic. Departed has so many great performances in it. Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, a lot more Alec Baldwin, a lot of great people in this. And, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say here is that it's a legacy award, but it's a legacy. It could be a legacy award, but it's also a great movie because Martin Scorsese is a fantastic director. I mean, I don't even know if he's actually made a bad movie. And, he crushed this one. You get like Jack Nicholson playing this like monstrous character, and he's like dominating a lot of scenes. But then you also have like Matt Damon holding his own, doing a really great job. Leo DiCaprio. I mean, I can name them all again, but I won't. They're all doing a fantastic job in this. This is a type of movie, a crime film that's going to like hold you on like the edge of your seat. And I think that all the performances are doing a great job. The great direction by Scorsese. It's set in Boston. It's a really fun like Boston film. Well, maybe not fun because it's like really intense. And it's one of those. But yeah, it won Best Picture. Rightfully so, against other really good movies. Little Miss Sunshine, Letters from Iwo Jima, a way better Clint Eastwood movie than the movie that I picked, Invictus. You actually have in like Letters of Iwo Jima, like a really great story, not just acting performances that are decent, but like not something that's going to really elevate your movie to like a next level as far as like sports films goes or biopics or, whatever Clint is trying to do. And honestly, I feel like Invictus kind of like set the Clint Eastwood's like downtick as a director. Martin Scorsese hit The Departed, and he actually started to become, a great prestige director, continue that legacy that he has had. He's a legacy director. But Clint Eastwood with Invictus, like it bored people, and like it started to send his like on a very downhill. He did J. Edgar, also boring.
And time.
I don't know.
All right, we're gonna go over to Henry. 2 more minutes.
Thank you for reading off the the cast for The Departed, because it actually showcases the waste of talent of all these fantastic actors. Just like a Crash, another movie that had a bunch of fantastic actors that just wasted them. Gangster Squad, Pearl Harbor. You can have a fantastic cast, and on paper, if you haven't seen the movie, or if you're just listening to some fluff bullshit, then yes, you can believe that. Wow, that cast, that's amazing. This is a great movie. And yes, it did win Best Picture, but guess what? Your movie won Best Supporting Actor and Best Lead Actor because of the fantastic performances at the heart of this film. Invictus is a movie about a true story where it's bringing two nations together. It combines politics and political, unfortunate scenarios from the 1990s, as well as sports, which brings people together. It showcases that regardless of the color of your skin, we can all, there's no color of your skin in sports. And regardless of your politics, your beliefs, at the end of the day, sports is what can bring us together. And it showcases that it has that. The scenes with Matt Damon and Morgan Freeman, when they're sitting down, it just showcases their abilities to be powerhouses in acting. At that point in his career, no one really considered Matt Damon a powerful actor. Even in Good Will Hunting, everyone's like, oh, he's just a young punk kid who did a good job with this fantastic screenwriting, not his performance. When you think of The Bourne Identity, you're like, wow, that's a change of pace. He's an action star, but he's not doing any technical acting. He's just fighting and stuff. And even when you think of The Departed, you're just thinking of him as a scummy scumbag, and he's at the bottom of the barrel of this fantastic cast of an overbloated movie that is a mess. The Departed is a movie that is very overly derivative of Martin Scorsese tropes and everything that he does in his films. Like I said, when you're thinking of the gangster genre, you think of The Departed, you think of Casino before you think of, you think of Goodfellas and Casino before you think of The Departed. When you're thinking of these unlikable lead characters, you think of The Wolf of Wall Street, as well as those ones I just mentioned. This is a movie that at the end of the day, not only do you not really care about any of these characters because they're all despicable scummies, but at the end of the day, Matt Damon is at the worst of it. He's not even a likable, lovable character. So his performance is just throwaway. It's literally one of those things when you think of Matt Damon, you're like, oh yeah, he was in The Departed, because you think of all the other actors, but you don't even care about that movie as a whole. When you think of Invictus, you think of the legacy that Nelson Mandela was able to bring together, and how it is an uplifting movie and is a fantastic movie within Clint Eastwood's filmography.
And time. All right. So we are going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
So when you think of The Departed, kind of what you're talking about earlier with the Hans Landa thing of like, oh, it's just gimmicky and the memes, and that's literally what The Departed is. All the over-the-top Boston accents. Literally, Mark Wahlberg was nominated for an acting Oscar, and everyone was appalled by it. It's one of those things where no one understood it, because it's at the end of the day, it's like they were just essentially trying to make Martin Scorsese happy, because they were like, well, at least at this time, all these other ones are despicable, and he's the cop, so we at least want to nominate the good guy, because you don't care about any of these characters. You care about Nelson Mandela. You care about Morgan Freeman's performance and Matt Damon, both in the sports, in the political aspects. When you think of uplifting historical speeches, you think of scenes from this movie, because Morgan Freeman brings it. It's not just Matt Damon, which is a question, but at the end of the day, it's about the movie, which together, Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon are powerhouses, and Invictus is an amazing, uplifting, awesome film.
I don't know, buddy. Some people actually really cared about the characters in The Departed, or at least like something in The Departed, because it's rated super highly, way more higher than your film is. And your film, it's just one of those. It's kind of like, Chicago 7, a lot of like Bohemian Rhapsody, a lot of those films that are like biopics that are just like, they try to put, I don't know, like they try to like coast on the name of Nelson Mandela, but they don't really actually do anything interesting in the film. That it's actually a really slow film, and it doesn't really capture like a lot of people's attention. It's kind of like, in my opinion, The Darkest Hour that Gary Oldman was in. That's like actually a really, really boring movie that like, it's like, all right, there you go. That's finally a movie that Gary Oldman was in, that he could finally get his Oscar, but holy shit, do I never want to watch that movie again. Invictus is kind of the same thing there. And you talk about Matt Damon finally being a good actor because of Invictus. That makes no sense. He's fantastic in Saving Private Ryan, other movies. Good Will Hunting, he's amazing
he's just playing a young punk kid in Good Will Hunting, and he's a side character in Saving Private Ryan. Invictus, he is the lead with Morgan Freeman, and at the time, Morgan Freeman is one of the GOAT actors of all time, and the fact that he's able to stand hand in hand, face to face with him in multiple scenes, and he's able to not be overshadowed because they were both nominated for an Oscar, showcases the fact that this was a dynamic duo. And it's one of those things. I love that you tried to knock Invictus because of the fact that in the same year of Letters from Iwo Jima of being Clint Eastwood, at the end of the day, that has no bearing, that has no relation. And The Departed won the Best Picture Oscars. When you think of the other movies that are within that year, Letters from Iwo Jima, a fine war film, The Queen, a fine historical
Great.
drama. Babel, a war film that really, doesn't have much say, and it's also overbloated. And Little Miss Sunshine, a comedy film that's never going to win Best Picture. So honestly, The Departed won by default, and it was a legacy award by that at the end of the day.
No.
Invictus is a movie that has something to say because it combines
You're
sports
coming up.
and it becomes in drama.
You're coming up with really throwaway lines to be like, those movies aren't great, so The Departed just won by default. But no, The Departed earned that
People been saying it for
award.
years.
And honestly, you tried to sit there and say that it didn't deserve it because what people? You tried to sit there and say. You try to compare it to Crash, be saying oh well, Crash is bad,
Both
so
won
Crash
Best Picture.
Is one of those things where The Departed is like Crash because Crash, no, people don't like Crash. Crash is considered one of the most overrated movies of all time.
If Crash was directed by Quentin Tarantino or Martin
not.
Scorsese or one of the top tier directors of all time, people would love it. And just why they give
honestly,
acclaim to The Departed. It's a similar thing. It's a narrative that covers multiple storylines. It has despicable main characters, and it really doesn't have anything to say at the end of the day other than the obvious of, hey, don't be in the mafia, or hey, don't be a racist cop. It's very the same of that.
I mean, if you want to compare that to every other gangster film, that's how a lot of them are just people trying to live their lives in crime, and you have the
the difference with Goodfellas is that at the end of the day, Henry Hill is convicted of a crime, and he snitches on everyone in that. And The Godfather, at the end of the day, everyone dies, and it's one of those things that you don't care about. At The Departed, everyone dies, but it's because they turn on each other, not because it's actually has something to say. Everyone just can't be defended, and you can't really care about them. You don't give a shit about the characters of The Departed. Just the actors.
And time. All right, we are going to go on to the closing arguments. Chad, you are up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I mean, you actually really do give a shit about these characters in The Departed because, when you're following Leo and stuff like that, you're rooting for him the entire movie. And then, there's deaths at the end that are so shocking. If you didn't care about those characters, you wouldn't really care about the deaths. But it's such an edge of your seat thing because you're enthralled the entire movie, and you want to see them succeed over the bastard that is Jack Nicholson. If he wasn't such a bastard, then maybe you wouldn't root for other people, but you do because he's such a bastard. So in contrast, they're way better people. Invictus, it's just not an enthralling movie. It's just a very slog. There's just some performances. Comparing Crash to The Departed, you might want to more so compare Crash to Invictus because it's just a lot of trying to do this whole racism thing where it just really misses the mark. I feel like we could have gotten a really, really great Invictus if it had been somebody like Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese, but no, we didn't get that, unfortunately.
All right, and that is time. Henry, back over to you for the final minute.
When you think of The Departed, you think of the movie that finally won Martin Scorsese's Oscar, and you're like, wow, okay, I guess we're gonna give him a gimme. And when you think of, and the other thing you think of this movie, you think of an overbloated, convoluted plot, and you think of gimmicky accents, and it's just a parody. When you think of Invictus, when you're thinking, hey, I'm about to go to the gym and I need a motivating speech, I'm about to do a movie Battleground, I need a motivating speech. You think of Morgan Freeman's performance as Nelson Mandela, and the fact that you have that, but you also have Matt Damon, who's able to be at the forefront of it, and they're able to work together both in this movie and really hammer home this narrative of we can come together through sports, and we can come together and we can be uplifting, and we can rise together as a people. It's one of those very uplifting things. By the end of The Departed, it's one of those where you don't care about any of those characters. Matt Damon is one of the main ones you're supposed to be following, and he's a scumbag. Leonardo DiCaprio, even him, he has a shady history, and he's also with Vera Farmiga, who's with Matt Damon's character. So it has the sex stuff there that's grimy and dirty, and you don't care about any of those characters. Like I said, Martin Scorsese has done way better movies. This is actually one of the top movies for Clint Eastwood's filmography because of these two performances and the amazing story.
And time. All right, guys, another excellent round there. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back as I will bring in our judges for the round. So to clean up just a couple of quick facts here. Here we go. So first off, Invictus was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon were nominated in Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor, respectively. However, they did not win the awards. Either of them was nominated twice, did not win. The Departed was nominated for 5 Academy Awards: Picture, Director, Supporting Actor for Mark Wahlberg, Adapted Screenplay, and Film Editing. It won all of them except for Supporting Actor for Wahlberg. In terms of talking about worthy Best Picture winners or what was unworthy, the only thing that I was able to find to really help me check this in any sort of way was Screen Crush did a ranked list of the top 15 least worthy Best Picture winners. While The Departed did not make that list, the film that was comparatively used, Crash, did rank in at number 4. And then to Chad's point that was made about the consistency of their filmmaking both before and after their movies, I decided to go ahead and do some quick math. So using Rotten Tomatoes as it is an easy review aggregator, Clint Eastwood has directed 9 films since he directed Invictus, averaging to a 58% like rating on Rotten Tomatoes when you add them all up and divide it out. So I went then and took the 9 previous films that he had directed before Invictus, and that does come out to a 74% average like rating, showing that there was a decline in terms of what people thought of his movies. In terms of Scorsese, the claim was made that Scorsese at least stayed the course, if not improved, and that is also supported. He has made 5 films since making The Departed, and when you average those out, they come out to an 84% critic rating. He has, in the 5 films prior to making The Departed, it comes out to a 76%. So both positive, but clearly an increase in terms of the overall thought of his films. With that said, though, as concise as you can get it for me, Rue, I'm going to go to you first. Who gets your vote and why?
Both competitors here kind of split their time on why the movie is the worst, with also why the performances weren't great. And I think one person just didn't hit the movie reasons, didn't counter the movie reasons as well. It was close, but because I didn't really hear anything going against the overbloatedness and the over the top and the parodies, I went with Henry.
Okay. Medivh, down to you, same thing.
I went with Chad, mainly because, you're talking about these movies, and he was hitting a lot of points about Invictus that I might not necessarily agreed with, but I get where he's coming from about how, the performances are kind of whatever, and they're just really a boring, drawn-out movie. But I don't think Henry really had a good response to that particular statement.
Okay, which means Austin, I shoot over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I just thought Henry dropped a lot of bombs in this one that weren't countered, like barely a touch at all. And I also thought he hit way more on the Matt Damon aspect more times than Chad did as far as the question's concerned. So I give it to Henry.
All right, judges, thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and put you in the back, and we will move on to the second blind round question. With that said, we at home, you guys already know what it is, so we're not going to waste time getting into it. It is, what is the best sequel or prequel made by Pixar? We're going to flip it. Henry, you are up first, so the timer will start when ready.
So when you think of any of the best sequels or prequels of all time, you think of how it compares to the first, whether how it adds on to it or how it juxtapose of what the narrative in terms of like prequels wise. And I went with Monsters University, because when you think of Monsters Inc., you think of 2 lead characters, and you think of a universe at Monsters Inc. of how do they get there, and just the scare facts and all that stuff, and why are these monsters relatable? Because if you think of monsters, especially in a kids film, you don't want to be able to relate to them, care about them, or find them appealing at the forefront. And Monsters University does a great job of expanding on that, of having everything with the university aspect, the college aspects, the different the comparisons of the nerdy fraternities as well as the more popular ones. You have characters that are as memorable, if not more memorable, in the prequel of Monster University than in the original, unlike movies like Cars 2, which this is a post Cars 2 era where, if you look at maybe technically the rating of it on Rotten Tomatoes, it's one of those things where it might have been harsh critically or judged harshly just because of it's coming off of Cars 2. But Monster University expands on this universe, expands on these characters, and is a memorable
time. All right, Chad, back over to you.
After the first 3 Toy Stories, people were like, okay, we're done. We're good. We don't need any more. And then Toy Story 4 was announced. People were like, what? We don't need another Toy Story. That trilogy was really great on its own. Actually, the Toy Stories are kind of the only ones that make great, like Pixar, like level, like emotionally impacting sequels. The other films try and they come with like lesser, like kind of like Luca and stuff like this, like Monsters University and even Incredibles 2, stuff like that, just kind of lukewarm. But then they came out with Toy Story 4, and people were like, okay, I didn't think that you could actually take a perfect trilogy, add on to it, and then have something masterful again. It is a fantastic movie. It is a fantastic character study for Woody because you see that there are things that were left off from Woody's story that needed to be concluded. And Toy Story does this, 4 does this masterfully.
And time. All right, we are going to go back over to Henry. 2 minutes.
So Toy Story 4 does the thing where it literally just is derivative of this entire franchise. If you look at the main villain, the dog Gabby, she's essentially derivative version of Lotso Hugging Bear and Prospector Pete, of just the same thing of we're angry that we weren't loved and we're trying to be a villain because that it's predictable and it's just cliche at this point. When you think of everything with Woody's arc, we already had that in Toy Story 3 of overcoming not being loved by Andy, and you switch over to Bonnie and everything and not being the guy. You had that with the entire original 3 with his dynamic between Buzz. And speaking of Buzz is pushed off the side. You honestly forget that he's in this entire movie, and he's one of the main characters of this entire trilogy. They push to the front Bonnie, the sheep, the Bo Peep. You push her to the forefront, and she's a solid character. You add that romance, but it really doesn't add anything to the entire Toy Story era or universe. Whereas Monsters University, like I said, that's what you want from a prequel or a sequel. You want to not only expand on the universe, but you also want to expand on the characters, and it provides depth for our 2 characters of Mike and Sully, but also provides depth with Randall and why he's kind of the way he is. And that's why that's the best villains in the entire like movie sphere are the ones that you relate to or you understand where they're coming from. And the fact that Randall was bullied in college, it's one of those things where you understand why he's kind of a dick in the Monsters Inc. And it's one of those things, like I said, you think of all the side characters, you think of Charlie Day's character, Nathan Fillion, Alfred Milne. These are memorable characters that are still side characters, though. It's not like in Cars 2 or Cars 3, or when you think of, any of these, lower tier Pixar movies where you have all these memorable and unworthy side characters at the forefront. It does a good job of having them as supporting characters, but you're not forcing them into the forefront. You have Helen Mirren's Dean, who's just a fantastic. If she's not better than Randall in this one, it's a close second. Like, it's one of those things where she's fantastic. And the dynamic between Mike and Sully, you actually expand on that, unlike what you have with Buzz and Woody in Toy Story 4. It's one of those things where it was unnecessary. Like everyone said, you have some things to it because you have the memorable aspects of characters that you had growing up, but at the end of the day, you don't care about what's in Toy Story 4, just what came before it.
And time. Okay, Chad, back over to you.
I mean, when you talk about like having like the monsters in college now, cool. I mean, it's cool, right? They're in college now, great. No, it's not really that good because Monsters Inc. is a fantastic movie, and it ends in a great closed thing where he opens the door. He says boo, and she says kitty. It's a perfect ending. You don't need any more from the Monsters universe. You expand it with, what's it like if there's 2 are in college? It's not that interesting. And then like, honestly, like Randall was like a really great villain. And you talk about like Randall, like them kind of like putting it into perspective. He's in the movie, like not at all really. And I was really like kind of hoping maybe they would have him as an actual character with some sort of arc or something like that, where he would go from good to bad and things like that. And you'd understand why, but there's just like one little scene where he's kind of bullied, and it's really like whatever. Like the new characters you actually don't remember and don't care about. I don't hear anybody ever talking about the new characters. New characters in Toy Story 4, I do hear people talk about Gabby and Forky. I thought Forky, played by Tony Hale, was a really great, funny character. Leaned into the Randy Newman song we got, the don't throw me away, or whatever it's called. Fantastic. This movie came in just like elevated what a 4th movie in a franchise could be, because we get like stuff like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and things that come out that are the 4th movie, and they're never really that good. And then you get Toy Story 4 and you're like, oh my God, this movie actually did something that no other franchise really could do. Whereas, Monsters University is just kind of a throwaway sequel. and I love that they bring back Bo Peep and like give her a lot of agency. They give her this new thing where this is a character with agency that can go and be rogue and do whatever they want. And this is such a new concept of Woody that his whole like perspective changes, and he wants to be with Bo Peep, and it's a great romance.
All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer starts when the first competitor speaks.
Yeah,
Basically,
go ahead. I was going to say everything that you touched on at the end of Monsters Inc. of like Goodbye Kitty. Yes, that's why this movie is a prequel, because it did have a great end to the story. But at the beginning of building up this universe and these characters, it's setting it up. At the end of Toy Story 3, you have a fantastic end to the trilogy, to these characters. You have an end to Andy and Woody's storyline and arc. But Toy Story 4 expands on it, but not in a good way. It answers questions that we never asked. It answers, like you said, people remember Gabby Gabby as a Lotso derivative, as a Prospector Pete derivative. You don't care about these characters as original characters. Forky, he's over the top and wacky because you want to hand it to your kid and it's cheap. But at the end of the day, it's not doing anything for us as a person. That's for the kids, and I respect that. But that's not what makes it the best.
I will say that Toy Story 3 is a great close on the Andy trilogy, and that's what it's like titled now, because that's the great close on their lives with Andy. But Toy Story 4 is, what it is? It's a great epilogue. And it's what it does is fantastic, because it totally changes, like I said, the mindset of Woody, and saying that like he's not satisfied, he's not fulfilled with being with Bonnie and trying to protect all these toys and stuff like that.
Then that definitely takes away the end of Toy Story 3. And the reason that we cried and came together, because the reason we cried is because these characters were almost going to die together. They accepted the separation of Andy together, and they accepted the coming into Bonnie's house together. But Toy Story 4 just takes all that away and separates them. And it separates Woody and Buzz is what you care about. Whereas in Monsters University, technically they're not separated, but they're coming together. But you still learn why they become friends and how they're able to bounce off each other.
You don't really need to know, like, just like you're saying how you don't need the epilogue, which I totally disagree with. You don't need the prequel, because they set everything up that you need to know for that universe in the original Monsters Inc. You don't need the prequel, and prequels are usually really not that good, because you're like, it's just like the prequels for Star Wars. Like, I don't care about what made Darth Vader. I don't care about what made all these things.
That's why people hate. That's why people hate the prequels. No one hates Monsters University because it's a fantastic movie and does a great job. And this is a universe. And this is a universe that we care about, because even right now, in present day, almost 10 years later, there's a Disney Plus show of the monster at work. And if this movie was so bad, they wouldn't have wasted their time with that universe, because how many great IPs that we had that they haven't expanded, or they canceled sequels because of the one that was before. They were able to still expand those universe. And if we're just talking about, it's just based on the original, then why don't we have a Ratatouille side story and all that type of stuff, or Luca and Soul and all these other great ones? It's because of specifically the universe that we have or the world we have in Monsters University, where in everything with Toy Story, it's derivative from Toy Story 4, and it essentially defeats the purpose of what we encapsulated and what we ended in the Toy Story 3 trilogy.
There's like zero emotional weight in Monsters University. You don't really care
all
about
the emotional weight all the emotional weight in Toy Story 4 is it hits you with the bullshit of like we're manipulation with music and all the stuff that we had before of like, hey, the member berries of, oh wow, we love Woody from the first 3 that we built up. I guess you'll cry because that's what we had as a kid. Just like in Lightyear, it's one of those things where we have Lightyear and you don't care about those things.
People do cry at the end of Toy Story 4 because they care about
the memory of they had from 1, 2, and 3.
No, because they care about Toy Story. They care about Toy Story, yes, but they also care about Woody as a character. They want to see him fulfilled, and you can see that he's not. You can see a little bit of sadness with him, not just because Andy's leaving, but just because he hasn't, like, he misses Bo Peep, and he hasn't really fulfilled like his agency as a character. His story ended with Andy, but has to continue because he needs that fulfillment.
And like I said, everything with Monsters University expands on that universe. You have the dynamic.
It doesn't matter if it expands. They're going to make.
But you expanded your universe, like you said, with the Bo Peep and stuff, but it's derivative of everything that you have 1, 2, and 3. Monsters University does a great job of building these characters of why they are. The entire thing in Monsters Inc. is how Mike is he doesn't have the confidence and everything.
If you want to say like Return of the Jedi and Last Crusade and all these great like sequels are derivative, go ahead.
All right, we're gonna go into the closing minute. Henry, you are up first when you begin speaking.
like I said, Toy Story 4, it's one of those things where the trilogy of Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 did a perfect job of setting a narrative and a storyline between Woody, Buzz, and Andy. And Toy Story 4 essentially just tore that entirely apart by changing the dynamic that you encapsulate at the end of Toy Story 3 with Woody's character, bringing in Forky, who's just kind of new, and at that point you just care for the kids, but not that. Being derivative with Gabby of Lotso Bear and Prospector Pete. Everything with Monster University, like I said, you have the dynamic between Mike and Sully, the coming together of their friendship, the overcoming the bullies, the teamwork, the camaraderie. It actually has better lessons in Monster University because what it teaches to the kids, because it shows them that you can work together. You don't have to be a jock, and it talks down on bullying. It comes together of friendship. It still shows together of confidence and all that stuff. And you still have a fantastic villain in Helen Mirren's character, which is not really a villain, but she's like that scary character, and she's memorable, just memorable as we had in Randall Net. And like I said, you have the beginning of Randall's character. You said it's not enough because it's not wasting the time with the side characters. It's building up Mike and Sully. And at the end of the day, when you think of Monsters Inc., you think of Mike and Sully. When you think of Monster University, you think of these characters in this world.
And time. All right, Chad, back over to you.
I mean, I like how you're hitting so hard on Gabby as a derivative villain, but actually it's weird because Toy Story 4 or 2 and Toy Story 3, the villains don't really learn their lessons. The villains just kind of like they get a chance and they don't. Gabby is one of those villains that really like learns, and you just finally see like an arc from her where she's doing the wrong thing. She learns that she really just wants to be loved. And when she finally gets that, she has like an arc. And I love when like villains can do that. Toy Story 4 does like the impossible. Let me read the critic consensus. Heartwarming and funny and beautifully animated, Toy Story 4 manages the unlikely feat of extending and perhaps concluding a practically perfect animated saga. That's exactly right. Let me read the Monsters University one. Offering Monsters Inc. fans a return visit and beloved characters, Monsters University delivers funny and thoughtful family entertainment for viewers of any age. That's what it is. It's a milquetoast thing for kids to throw on for kids to watch. But Toy Story 4 is something that kids can love because you get Forky and all of these really great things, but also it's elevated because of the emotional weight. And if you're not crying at the end of Toy Story 4, you're doing it wrong.
All right. Guys, another excellent round. This has been an incredible match. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back as I bring in our judges for the deliberation. So again, not much, but just a couple small quick fact checks. In terms of how these sequels or prequels are viewed by people, using the aggregator of Rotten Tomatoes, the 3 Toy Story sequels do rank far and away above any other sequel that Toy Story has made. Toy Story 4 does technically come in third of those 3 films, but it has a 97% approval rating, so it's all very, very close. In terms of kind of what's left of the rest, Monsters University comes in third at 80% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, coming in behind both Finding Dory and The Incredibles 2. In terms of Toy Story 4, the song name that Chad was attempting to remember is I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away, which was one of 2 original songs written for Toy Story 4 by Randy Newman. And then in terms of the question that was posed of are Pixar going to continue films, current studio head Pete Docter gave an interview in 2021 where he discussed this idea, basically saying that when he took over in 2018 from John Lasseter, a number of films for years to come were already in production. The last of those being Lightyear. So everything from here on out is his actual envisioning and running of the studio. He said that while he does think that the studio got carried away with sequels in the 2010s, they do, to quote him, keep the lights on, and they're not going to go away, but they won't be happening as much, nor they will be finding other avenues to do them. As we've seen on Disney Plus, Monsters Inc. did have a sequel show in Monsters at Work, and Cars also just announced its own follow-up, Cars on the Road. So they are going to be continuing to franchise properties, potentially even some of the newer ones, but it's not what Docter wants his main focus to be, unlike probably Lasseter's later term in the 2010s. With all that said, though, Mehdi, you are up first. Based on the arguments as concise as you can get it for me, who gets your vote and the main sell?
I went with Henry, and it's not just because I'm not a fan of Toy Story 4, and he hit a lot of the points I said, but he did add that Monsters University adds to the lore, whereas Toy Story 4 just felt like a repetition of certain things that had happened in the previous sequels that had been done better beforehand. That was my main reasoning.
Okay. Austin, I go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the sell?
I just thought Henry dropped nuke after nuke in this one that Chad never really recovered from. I didn't hear Chad really hit on Monsters University really almost at all. I thought it was kind of a 75-25 match. And to me, like, I just think he just destroyed this one. So Henry.
All right. Well, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit everyone in the back, though, because your winner and defending champion by a final score of 4-2, Henry Confidential Sanchez, pulling out another big win. Sir, congratulations, man. Your record, it is an impressive, daunting record, 8-1 with 2 knockouts. You have done a great job. 7-win streak. That loss was pretty early on. How are you feeling, man, after all of this?
Dude, it's literally what just history has said. When you're on top, it's a combination of it. Everyone's coming for you, and the competition is just going to be stout regardless. Dude, I prepped. I took this seriously. I loved the questions. I knew exactly what Chad was going to do, and he did it. But his approach works, and it's one of those things where his approach worked just like with Joe. That's why they're just great, players. If you have that prep stuff, and even you with all your like data stuff, if it works for the judges, it's a fantastic approach. It's not my style, and that's why I love debate. You have different styles. It could work for the judges, and it's one of those things where honestly, I only technically not in a bad way, but I only disagreed with the judging on one. I was really confident about, but the other ones, dude, I've never had a match where I was so like this could go either way on every question, and that's coming from me, who's very confident, where it's like I literally would not have been mad except for the one which I did get voted against, where I was like, if I don't get that one, I understand. Chad brought it. It was an honor to face him. I'm excited to see him continue on this journey, and shout out to all the judges and shout out to you hosting. This was a fantastic match, and I hope that people love it.
Absolutely, man. And so, yes, so as you said, this is the first time since we kind of got everything done with the tournament this year where in the immediate vicinity, we don't 100% know who will be taking you on next, right? Obviously, there will be at least one more before the end of this year, but we do know that Joe Fairley does still have a champs token in his back pocket. However, he has chosen to instead go into the tournament and not use it rather than, waiting a little bit longer to use it. We do know that now, obviously, at the time of airing, people at home will know who is in the final. But currently, we have our summer tournament going on, in which the winner will also be given a champs token, meaning they can challenge for the title, but they don't necessarily have to do it immediately, although they do have the choice to. The 4 people left at the time of recording are Amaru Moses, Jeremy Adams, Alec Miller, and Will Cohen. So any one of them could be potentially your next target. We also know coming up in October, we have the end of year tournament with the top 16 competitors that were eligible heading back into it. There's a lot of angles that this could come. Your next opponent isn't quite as clear as it was last time. How are you feeling in the wings while waiting?
Dude, it's one of those ones where you can't get rusty with debate when you're me who's always talking. So I don't mind the layoff. I love keep going because I just love, the competition. I just love the game. But if I have to have, a wait that by any stretch of imagination doesn't bother me, I'm getting back into trivia and there's other things I can do and plenty of other side shows that I'm running where it's like my time's going to be covered. So it's not that big of a deal. And I'll be ready when it happens. Like I said, this is a fantastic roster. It's not just top heavy in terms of the quote unquote veterans. There's a lot of the new people that are coming in because with, like I said at the beginning, the film love stuff has nothing to do with your experience. It's about, age. And we have a bunch of older people that are older in the sense of like, they're not like 16, but like older where they've been around the block and watching films. So even if they don't have the experience with the gameplay, they have film knowledge. So, like earlier, like we've seen plenty of examples in this tournament and in this league of players who, even though their record doesn't show, they're fantastic and knowledgeable and just keep the experience going. They're going to be, tough opponents, and I will be ready for everyone. All the names you said, those 4, those will be hard opponents, and whoever's in those tournaments and come out of that tournament will be a hard one. Like, I'm going to bring it. So whoever